Cool, we're live. So it is your internet birthday, huh, DT?
It's my internet birthday. Yay. I think I am, I'm in my 50s, I think. Or wait, 60s, I think.
Oh.
And that's how you know that Facebook sells your information, because I get all this retirement shit in the mail all the time.
Really?
Yeah. So they know. So they share my address, but I don't know how they share it. But I've got basically a fake profile, right? Mm-hmm. But it Facebook shares the information of my birthday and stuff, because I get all this old man stuff, all kinds of like
ARP or something.
Yeah, everything. Join ARP, and somebody's going to be in town for reverse mortgages, and all the kinds of stuff. So
is Matt Baldoni with the Bee Gees going to be there, or the Simon and Garfunkel band?
Yeah, I get that stuff. Yeah.
No, I set up mine January 1st, 1947. And every New Year's Day, like, oh, hey, happy birthday. Oh, hey, happy. It's like, it's not my birthday. It's not my birthday. It's not my birthday. And after a while, I just said, yeah, thanks. Yeah. Hey, I'm 70 odd years old right now.
Right. Do I sound 70?
Well, they don't look at the year. They're just like, oh man, hey, New Year's Eve, baby, huh? Well, it's far enough away from Christmas. You get your own separate birthday. I'm like, yep, that's right. Then I get my real birthday too. So
the cookies on Facebook, it'll show ads, and there'll be like a T-shirt that says "born in '57" and 57 strong or whatever, because that's the year that I use for my fake birthday is 1957. So so yeah, what would that make me? That makes me, what is that? 61?
61, 62 or something?
Yeah. I'm nearing retirement. So yeah, I need all that retirement info.
Yeah. Well, do they ever give you like in this year some kind of like mural or motif? They're like, hey, Chubby Checkers and the Fat Boys had a #1 single the year where you're born. You get any of that or no?
No, none of that from Facebook. They just want to sell you shit. So you get the 57 strong, born in 1957.
Well, what was kind of
established 1957, whatever.
Well, what was really scary is, I'm out here motorcycling about, hanging out with the wonderful TJ Martinell. We're at his command center. Not really. We're at his church, but that's a different story because the church has internet. He really is doing the minimalist Jack London Call of the Wild, Henry David Thoreau kind of remove himself from the plugged in. But then he's like, oh yeah, if we want to use internet, we got to go to church. I'm like, okay.
The TJ's image on the, it looks like you're contemplating something very profound, and then my image, I just look confused.
Hey, dude, you got Captain Ron. Like, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen out there.
What?
Oh, that the image you're using is Captain Ron from the movie.
Right.
So his famous saying was, "Hey, boss, if it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen out there."
Well, I pretend that's Snake Plissken. That's like Snake Plissken confused.
Well, dude, he's got the Rastafarian hat on the back.
Yeah, I know.
Well, wait.
I know. I've seen Captain Ron. I've seen.
Okay, I was about to say, I was like, dude, how could you possibly have that photo as your alias and then not know who Captain Ron is? So,
yeah, I saw it once or twice. Seeing Snake Plissken a lot more. So.
Wait, did Captain Ron and Snake Plissken both have
the eye patch? Yeah.
Yep.
Well, was Captain Ron even blind in one eye, or was it just a gimmick in his case?
It was a gimmick for Ron, right?
Well, no. He did lose. He had a glass eye.
Oh, okay. So, I thought he switched it at one point. In the movie.
He switches it, and they think it's weird that he has an eye, and then they realize it's a glass eye, and they freak out.
Oh, okay.
Shark attack, Schwab.
See, TJ, let me explain what happens when you hang out with TJ. I thought I knew a lot of movies, but TJ will throw you quotes, and you look at him like, huh? And he's like, don't you remember 1937, the James Cagney movie that no one alive today has seen? And you're kind of like, TJ, no one alive today has seen that movie.
No, dude, that discussion has only been with Casablanca. And you have lamented the exact same problems with trying to use some of those great lines in real life conversation.
Well, yeah, that's Casablanca, but and it's not even necessarily the old ones, but you get like what was the other one? it was an obscure 90s movie. You're like, maybe it was a John Cusack movie. You said this, you're looking at me.
Better Off Dead. $2. I want my $2.
It's funny. I did not use the $2 line with him. I'm trying to think of what line he was thinking of, but it was some random movie that was popular in the 80s or something like that. But
yeah, I saw it, and I was like, but that was so long ago. And I think I saw it once, and then it was in the theater. Your knowledge of movie quotes is unrivaled.
There are people that try to communicate solely with Seinfeld quotes. I guess there are some people that try to have a complete conversation just quoting Seinfeld. So
which is
there
funny.
Are those people.
And this is where I started to tone down the number of movie quotes, because there were people I knew. I never watched Seinfeld when I was just at all. So they're all talking around the Christmas time about Festivus, and I have no idea what they're talking about. But it was this inside joke. And then I realized, well, maybe that's how people feel when I start bringing up obscure movies, which in my defense, I think they're a lot wittier stuff. What's the other one? Oh, now the other people quote Friends, which there's no defense of that, but that's a separate topic.
Well, your quotes are fine. It's just that instead of your generation, or maybe even our, you go like smack dab in the middle where like no one's seen that movie, or if they did, it was so long ago. And then I'm like looking it up. I'm like, oh, that's what he was saying. Oh, that is funny. Now that I'm at the gym, but
I'm helping to educate the masses one person at a time.
Thank you. It's very cheerful. John Steele, you're on. What's up?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Hey, you always start early, you never started right at 4. You always got to start early.
Well, I'll explain why, because I am a professional here. You usually just get warmed up and get people on, but then once conversation is good, I hit the record button, which with you guys it is. So it's like, yeah, we're fine. I hit the record button.
Oh yeah, I mean, fair enough, because if you got some really good stuff, you don't want to miss it and say, "Damn, we didn't have the record thing going on. The audience didn't get this one."
Right.
No, I hear you, brother. So how's everything going? How's everybody doing?
I'm tired. It's cold up here. I don't know if you knew this, but up in the mountains it gets cold.
I heard rumors to that effect.
Yeah. Well,
it's a blizzardy 75 degrees. I mean, you almost want to get your parka out. Almost.
But TJ, you got to explain this to me. How come there's snow? Like the tops of the mountains here in the Cascade, do any of them break 10,000?
Mount Rainier does.
Yeah, okay. That's there's also Mount Adams, and then there's a bunch of mountains in the North Cascades, but those are all very technical climbs. The stuff that I do near the I-90 corridor and then in Central Washington by where I live, these are all they're hard climbs. Like Mount Kashmir was a hard climb. It was like 5,000 feet, 6,000 feet of elevation gain, but it's just straightforward. It's a hike. Right. You don't have to bring climbing gear. But yeah, the snow does stick around, but that's really depending on where they're positioned. If they're in the right spot, they'll never see the sun.
So it's shadows? Because I was trying to figure out.
Some of it is just elevation. Like, I'm just speaking about Mount Rainier because I've hiked it. I didn't summit. I didn't climb the top. Mount Rainier, I don't think you can get to the summit unless you're like a professional mountain climber. But you can get about halfway up. I remember hiking it, and it was in August, and making snowballs and everything. It was cool.
Yeah, it was really interesting. I was reading about a relative of mine. His grandfather was a scoutmaster after World War I because he wanted to toughen up the boys, because even back then he thought they were a little soft. And one of the things he'd do is he'd take them on hikes up to, as far as they could go on Mount Rainier before they'd have to do any technical climbing. And he's taking 10-year-old boys up on this hike, which an ordinary man tries to do nowadays is actually I wouldn't necessarily call it impressive, but it's definitely out of the norm for most men's physical condition.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's at altitude, and it's a steep walk the whole way, but there's several different trails, just hiking trails on Mount Rainier, depending on which side you come from. I'm not an expert. I used to do a lot of this stuff in my 20s, and as I got older, I'm not as big on it. But it was really funny because while you're hiking up, you'll meet all these guys coming down that had summited, and they're all in their full gear, all the regalia with the walking sticks and all the backpacks, because you can't summit it in a day.
Right.
I think it's at least a 2-day climb, isn't it? Like you have to,
unless you bring like my brother and my cousin, they'll bring skis. And now I don't know if they go to the very top, the summit, but they will hike up the mountain with their skis on their backs and then ski down. So it's possible to do. It's possible to go farther with skis in a day than normal. I don't know if they ever actually summited the mountain.
Okay, yeah. I guess it depends which side you go up. I'm not really into that whole subculture of climbers, and I know there's different. I don't know if route's the right word, but ways to get to it. Like even Everest, there's different ways to go up to it.
Right. And it's interesting you were talking about the subculture, because I was just explaining to Cappy this morning about the climbing culture that's really popular in.
Yeah, why don't you go deal with the Reverend, because we knew this was going to happen. We knew this was going to happen. Anyway, but no, John, tell me this. Explain to me, why is there snow up on top of these mountains if very few of them are above 10,000 feet during June?
Exactly meteorologically, I can't tell you off the top of my head, other than the fact that they regularly get snow on that level. Even like when it's raining in Seattle, when these places in elevation are constantly accumulating snow through a very long snow season, because it rains a lot here in the Pacific Northwest, and whenever it's raining in Seattle, it's snowing in the mountains. Like whenever they do the weather forecast here, they'll say 7,000 feet is the freezing point. So those, like, everything above 7,000 feet is getting snow when we're getting rain. So just my assumption is, and there's no science behind this, is just anecdotal, is that they get so much of it that it doesn't have time to melt. So
Right.
if we had a really long summer, or a particularly scorching one, it would. It's just that they get so much snow that it just takes longer to melt. It's like a big ice block takes a longer time to melt than an ice cube.
Right, and that's what actually is can get frustrating with the climbing here, hiking here, because you have to wait so long for the snow to melt, because you can't do the hiking, as opposed to near Seattle. There's mountains there that you can do where within, I'd say, early spring, maybe February or March, because the snow melts a lot sooner because they're not the same elevation gain.
I got some stats if you want them. I looked them up quick.
Yeah, let's take a look. What do you got?
How much snow and ice is on Mount Rainier? Over 35 square miles of permanent ice and snow cover Mount Rainier. Of all the glaciers in the contiguous U.S., Mount Rainier's Emmons Glacier has the largest surface area, 4.3 square miles. Carbon Glacier is the longest, 5.7 miles, thickest, 700 feet, and has the lowest terminus elevation, 3,500 feet in the contiguous U.S. So there's glaciers up there too.
That's just amazing to me. 3,500 feet, and there's glacier. That's what's throwing me off.
I'm sorry to interrupt there. How thick did you say it was? It was how thick?
The thickest is 700 feet.
700 feet thick.
Yeah. Yep. Or as we say in Minnesota, oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, I'm 700 feet thick. That's, how many football fields is that?
7. No. 2.5. 2 1/3. Sorry.
That's still really thick. Damn. Wow.
Well, that explains
why there's snow up there.
Impressive. Wow. Okay, cool. Hey, Aaron, have you ever done any real climbing, like with the full-on gear and that whole thing? Like, I know you're a huge hiker, but have you ever done like the real technical mountain climbing?
I've done rock climbing and cliff climbing. They got some cliffs over on the St. Croix River, which is the border between Minnesota and Wisconsin, but nothing more than 100 feet. And I was stupid and young. I was like 21, and I was doing it without gear. And then I got to the top, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing that again. And,
that was kind of like your bucket list thing. All right, I did it, and that was stupid.
No, it was even worse. It was to impress a girl, which I probably did impress, but it was a really dumb maneuver because I could do it, but one slip up and all that. So, and the problem, the main reason I don't do any like technical climbing is the same reason I don't camp. Is you got to bring all your gear with. It slows you down, and then it doesn't become fun anymore. There's some people like let me tell you the funniest thing I've heard in my entire 43 years of life. Now you guys better be sitting out because this is pretty funny. So TJ and I are trying to figure out like what we can climb and get back down off the mountain on before it gets dark, or how much time and working this and something that's going to fit into our schedule. And I'm like, well, we could do this, or 2,000 feet elevation gain, maybe 6 miles round trip, pretty short, but not light. And he says, well, I know you're against this, but we could wake up early in the morning. And 5 minutes later, I got up the floor from crying. I was laughing so hard, and my stomach hurt. My stomach muscles were tense because I was laughing so hard at what he recommended. But no, I can't. I like to enjoy my hikes. And if you're hauling in camping gear and you got to bring your own toilet paper, and you got to bring in food and a stove, and then you have to bring and ropes. I don't care what they're made out of. Ropes alone weigh a lot, and so do the metal hooks and all that. And then it's just like, okay, this isn't fun anymore. This is, I like.
Well, it becomes like a job at that point almost, right?
Oh yeah, I know this one gal, and she and TJ. I'd love to take bets on these two. She did the Grand Tetons, of which there's 3 main ones. She did the tallest one in one day. And it was one of those deals, wake up at 2 a.m., out the door by 2:30, and boy, ain't that fun. And she's kind of mental. I mean, you got to have the right mentality for it, because it did not sound fun at all. You're waking up when you're barely supposed to be awake. You did not get good sleep. I don't care what time you go to bed. You didn't get good rest. They hit the trail at 3:34. You got to use headlamps. You got to have gear. You hike up. It's cold. Then you got to climb, and you're doing ice picks and everything like that. And she was explaining, like, there's like 3 types of fun. There's fun that's fun while you're doing it. Fun that you're not having fun while you do it, but you look back at it and it was fun. Or things that was fun while you were doing it, but it was miserable afterwards, like drinking. And she says climbing these mountains are miserable while you're doing it, but then fun after you say you can look at it for the rest of your life and see you did it.
That's a really insightful little saying there. There's a lot of truth to that. That's brilliant though, because it's true. Like the drink, you love it. Like when you're doing it, was a great time. It's all this crazy stuff we did, and then the next day, of course, you pay for it. Or now that we're in our 40s, we're paying for it for 2 days sometimes.
Or you get some girl pregnant, you pay for 18 years of your life.
Hey, it's 26 now, isn't it? Isn't it 26? They can stay on your insurance.
Yeah, 26 years.
Well, not 18 anymore.
Sorry, I was born in 1947. So.
No, Aaron, it's worse now, because now you got the kids suing you because you want to kick him out of the basement.
Right.
So he's at 30, right?
Say, yeah. Aaron, I was going to ask you, what would you get up early for? Is that a really short list?
We could all take a bathroom break for a good 5. Yeah, it's a very short list. I'd have to really think about it.
Not golf. You're into golf now. You wouldn't.
No, I would not wake up early for golf. I wouldn't wake up early for. I love hiking. Don't get me wrong. I love climbing mountains. I love it. It's just I hate. It goes back to when I was in college. I had to wake up with 2 hours sleep, 3 hours sleep, and go work 20 hours. I hated it. If there was an obscene amount of money that would get me up. If it was
that would do it for me, man. Money.
No fishing or hunting or anything, right? You don't fish or hunt?
No, I mean, I would like to hunt, but then my buddy Craig explained, like, oh yeah, you got to wake up at 4 a.m. to get the deer. I'm like, no, you don't. You just drive down the road. You'll hit one inevitably. Just bring the gun on the way.
Especially if you're driving in my area.
Yeah, I saw some coming up here.
Yeah, it was crazy. I was just driving back home from town, and these 4 deer just sprint right across the road.
Yeah, I'm trying to think, like, if you said Eva Mendes would, satisfy every sexual desire I ever had at like 5 a.m. Okay, I get up for that, but I go right back to bed after it was done. No, there's very little, an emergency crisis, like someone's going to die if you don't get out of bed. Okay, Well, who is it? Is it DT? Well, no, it's not that important.
Yeah, who is it? Yeah, you wouldn't make a good emergency doctor there. You're like, I don't know.
Well, it'd be
How
depending.
old are they? I don't know. They're not worth it.
You
How
know,
about asshole consulting emergencies? Maybe you could charge more money early in the morning.
Oh, I have. Not necessarily early
Okay.
in the morning, but people like I got a job offer. I need to get back to them in 48 hours. Can you
Yeah.
help? And if I get the email in time, I will, but I'll charge extra. Although, god darn it, man, did I get angry. So I don't know if you guys knew this. When you ride a motorcycle, you can't answer emails. It's shocking, but you can't just, you have to pull over and you have to break out your laptop. You have to unpack it. And what did I do? I went from Vegas to Reno to Boise to Seattle, essentially. 3 days, hard riding, about 500, a little bit shy of 500 miles each day. And I finally get time to fire up the laptop, pull up and going in. And one guy was cursing and swearing at me because I didn't get back to him in 2 days on asshole consulting. And then also other people like, hey, are you all right? Are you going to get back to me? Jeez, and I'm kind of like, and these people knew. They knew I'm riding on a motorcycle. And I had to, like, the one guy on asshole consulting, I basically said, do you want a refund or do you want to get your panties out of a bundle and do you want me to do your response? Because I don't tolerate that in my office. But even people who knew I was on a bike, I'm really like, I'm looking at them like, what the hell is wrong with you? What don't you understand? So, but
give
yeah,
him a break. He's Johnny on the spot almost all the time. He's always on time.
Yeah, I always do get back to people.
A little bit of a delay. Give him a break, man.
Right, and it was the weekend too. That's the other thing. It's like I'm not this 24/7 machine that's at your beck and call. And if you want me to be, I'll do it. But it's going to cost you not an arm and a leg, but it's going to cost you, an extra $20. But yeah, if I had to wake up and do a Skype session in the morning, that would be be. Well, and I'd say it'd be about $100 to wake up early. Because if I use flights, like when I fly back from Minneapolis to Vegas or vice versa, you could catch that red eye flight, and you could save yourself $100. I'm like, no, I will pay the extra $100 so I can wake up at 10 a.m. and catch my flight at 2 or whatever.
Yeah, jet lag can be a bitch. I remember I flew from Seattle to Heathrow, and it wasn't a direct flight. Like I flew from Seattle to New York, and then from New York to Heathrow. So I don't know how many time zones that is, but it took me like days to get my clock set back again, because it was just like so many time zones. I was so out of it. That was a real bitch, because it was a frequent flyer trip, so I had to take American Airlines, and they don't have a direct flight, because there are direct flights from Seattle to Heathrow, but they kind of go over the over the globe, the
Arctic.
The Arctic, yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry, and that's quicker. But doing this, transcontinental and then Atlantic flight was just like, oh my god, I was so out of it when I got there. It was just and I only had 2 days in London, and then I was on my way to Dublin, and that was a real bitch, I got to tell you.
I think it's about a day an hour. So if for every time zone, you need about a day to get used to it. So because I lived overseas for a while, and it took me a week or so to get on their time fully. So.
I remember coming back I was okay flying out to Europe, but coming back, it was at least a week and a half. I'd rather have been hungover. It just messes with you.
It's a weird thing. It really did mess with me. Coming back wasn't as bad because my sleep, I never got really the good restful sleep for some reason. I think that's part of it, is your sleep is not the real deep sleep. But after coming back, and it was a wild time that I did there. I did too much drinking while I was there because, well, one, you're in fucking Dublin, but you're not just Dublin, Ireland. So of course you're gonna be drinking, and it was a wedding. So all those festivities going on and everything. And just I was there just for leisure. There was no business or everything, so I was going out and hitting all the spots and whatnot. But I was lucky. I was able to. I pretty much slept on coming back. Slept on both. I was so tired. I met a girl my last night there, and she stayed at the hotel. We were up all night at my hotel, and I was so disgusting. I didn't even get a chance to shower because I had my flight was like really early. I had to catch like a puddle jumper from Dublin to Heathrow, and I got on that flight, and I had like an hour wait for the flight from London back to New York, and I actually fell asleep with my boarding ticket in my hand right at the gate. And luckily this gate agent lady says, "Excuse me, sir, is this your flight? It's about to take off. Is this your?" And I just like ran down the jetway, like just made it. If I was 30 seconds later, I would have missed my flight. And I pretty much fell asleep the whole way because I just, so I did adjust a lot better coming back. It was kind of the opposite of what you said, where you had it worse coming back. I had it worse when I was going.
I found the strategic use of booze will help. If you can get hammered on the plane back so that you're falling asleep and that you land and you wake up and it's like morning, you're like, okay, I did it pretty good, although I may be paying for it later on. But what I don't get is these people who can do the red eyes. The GF will fly out of Vegas at midnight, land in Minneapolis, 5 a.m. Minneapolis time, and go straight to work.
Oh,
and I'm like, what? I'm like, how do you do it? Because she's no spring chicken anymore. I'm like, what? How? And she's like, well, do you want to come with? I'm like, no, I don't want to come with. No, I would rather ride the damn bike back than do a red-eye flight at 11:55 p.m. That's how they get you. Say, hey, it's not really midnight. It's 11:59.
Yeah, 11:59. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Oh, okay. Well, then it's okay now. It was 5 minutes later. Hell no. But yeah, and God bless her. She saves a lot of money. But no, I'm willing to pay that extra. You shop around. What is it? No more than $70-$80, and you can get back and just. But no, that's one few of the luxury non-minimalist things I will afford myself is a flight where I don't have to wake up early or go in late because life is too short for that stuff.
Yeah, it's asking just too much. We got some people in the chat, by the way.
We do. What do we got? Tell me.
Let me see here. Okay.
Thanks for covering that. By the way,
to be on time is to be late. To be late is stupid. Carl Hines asks, where's Ann? Yeah, where is Ann?
Ann is going to come on separate shows. I'm mixing everything up. As you know, we're in the embryonic and experimental stages, and so we have way too many cooks in the kitchen. And to be honest, until she gets her audio stuff figured out, I can't have this happening all the time. And I love her. That's why I tell her the truth. It's kind of because I love having Ann on because she provides a female viewpoint and incredibly sharp wit. But I can't have that happening all the time.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. One time, it was a few years ago. I don't know if it was that long ago, but one time she was on. I was on a stream with her on the Beckloff channel, and she started like chopping vegetables.
Yeah, doing dishes. Yeah.
And like Beckloff just lost it. Like he got so pissed off. He just like, and he's not the kind of guy to do that, but he got so angry about it. He's like, what the fuck,
Well, no, look, it's one thing where it's like, oh, funny, haha, we all get together and we live stream and do that. But it's also, no, if you want to put together a good show, because I am a huge consumer of podcasts. And if there is a distracting noise or the audio quality isn't good, and my audio quality isn't perfect because I'm mobile right now. But this is why I invest good money into my recording studio, why I invest good money into good microphones. Because if you want people to come back, and I can understand Chris is, Chris doesn't have any other regular job. The longest employer he's had has been YouTube. If he's going to make a serious go at, if anyone's going to make a serious go at, DT, you got a heck of a nice setup down there. You got 2 separate mics. You got a Windows 10 machine that constantly breaks down and consumes all the. Awesome. Yeah, but you put the resources and energy into it.
Yeah, I think if you're going to do it, you should do it right. I think that's wise.
Yeah. So
someone actually wrote Ann and her drum kit. We got a couple of guys here. There's people giving shout outs where they're from. Fernando Covett says hello from Houston. V Speak says hello from Ireland. Hey, what's up,
Hey,
man?
there we go.
Fellow Mick. We got McMilk says hello from England. John Turnan, I'm also from Ireland. All right. All the green bloods are here. Wayward Hero. Fine, I'll play this game Fort Worth. I'm not sure what that means, but anyway.
Must be
a game
Texas too.
Yeah. There's a game named after the town of Fort Worth, Dallas, Texas.
No, everybody's saying where they're from. So he's saying, or he or she is saying, "Fine, I'll play."
I get. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Sorry, Wayward. That was my part. Yeah, because he's from Fort Worth. Steel City. I don't know where that is. Where's Steel City?
Isn't that Pittsburgh?
Oh, okay.
Steelers, Steel City, yeah, I'd imagine.
I used to be, when I was in a sports bowl, I was a huge Steeler fan, going all the way back in the day when Terry Bradshaw was quarterback. That's how old I am, when I was 8 years old.
I'm a zombie fan, so all those zombie movies are from Pittsburgh.
Oh, okay.
George Romero.
Wait, were they filmed in Pittsburgh or something?
Yep. Yeah, George Romero filmed a lot of his movies in Pittsburgh. Yep.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
Was that like symbolic because, like, you know, when all the steel mills closed down, that, you know, everybody was just like kind of the Walking Dead because, you know, the what happened? You know, I mean, that state got decimated in the 70s and 80s, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. I think that's just where he was from, but that is a good point, and it does have kind of its own look. Its landscape kind of has a look to it, I think, and so it worked for the movies, obviously. So.
Well, I guess Pittsburgh has a pretty big renaissance, unlike Philadelphia. But Pittsburgh, because I remember in the 80s, you know, all the steel mills had closed and coal mine closed. And, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, why would you go to Pennsylvania, period? And Philadelphia is just a dive. And I will pick on everybody who lives on Northside Philadelphia for not picking up your own backyard. That's just shameful. And I always thought Pittsburgh was the same thing, and apparently not. Apparently it's had like this IT computer renaissance, and people are like, oh yeah, Pittsburgh's really nice. Pittsburgh's got this, it's got that. And so one of these days I'm going to go visit, I don't know if you guys know him, but Ed Lattimore, he boxes out there. That's where he's from. And so I was like, oh, maybe I will check out Pittsburgh.
Well, Philadelphia is more melanin enriched than Pittsburgh is, so that has a little bit to do with it.
The city of brotherly love, right? Isn't that Philadelphia? The city of brotherly love.
A lot of brothers there.
Oh yeah.
So you know, that has something to do with it. But remember there was this really I don't want to say funny because it was tragic in a way, where there was some sort of hostage situation years ago in Pittsburgh, and I don't know. I think they shot like a smoke grenade, like some sort of incendiary device, and it pretty much turned the whole, like, half of the city of Pittsburgh into fucking Waco. Like, they let it burn, and it just the fire got totally out of control, and like it was just
what
like.
What year was this?
I forget, man. It was many years ago. I think it was in the 90s. But it was just like such major incompetence on the part of the police and the fire department. I mean, basically it's a freak show because it's such a, like, whenever you get a city that is so entrenched in one part, like, you know, totally a Democratic city, for example, and there's no Republicans that even really run anymore, the level of corruption just spirals out of control because there's no other party watching what the other party is doing. You know what I mean? Kind of like the same thing like with Detroit. Like, wasn't that the mayor, was named Kirkpatrick, where he was actually in prison and he was still mayor?
Was that DC, Marion Barry?
Oh, Marion Barry, DC, same thing. These places that all like the Democratic Party is so entrenched that they can get away with anything because they don't have anyone else looking over their shoulder to run it. So they're all on the same team. So they're rigging the system, right? So they're, you know, there's all this corruption. And eventually, like, you might have like a state agency or a federal agency come in when they, you know, there's this huge fuck up, and you know, to investigate this, like, you know, like the city council people, you know, giving like no bid contracts to their, you know, I think this was in Detroit too, like no bid contracts to this one councilwoman gave it to her husband, you know, at like 5 times what the, you know, the cost was, all that kind of stuff. And the city's going bankrupt. I mean, that's how a lot of this came out, was Detroit, the state, Michigan actually took over the city of Detroit's finances because they said, look, you kids obviously don't know what you're doing. Get ahead. where the adults are in charge now. And when they were doing like the audits of the city, they realized that, you know, I mean, Detroit was so bad that they were actually losing money on parking tickets. For every parking ticket they wrote, like the administrative cost was like $5 more than that they received from the ticket.
That sounds like Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, no, I'm not serious. I mean, that's how Democrats and liberalism is. You know my feelings on that stuff, where it's literally a fucking poisonous cancer. It's like a contagious cancer, and it rots everything. And I mean, and you can see the rot it's done to these cities, like Philadelphia, which you've been to. You've driven through it, so you've really seen it.
Oh, I saw it. Yeah, I saw it. Well, and I won't lie to you guys, because I'd love to meet you there, John, and come down off the mountain, but I don't want to go into Seattle because the traffic is so bad. Now, this doesn't mean burned out buildings. Seattle is no North Philly, but even in the 20 years that I've on and off visited Seattle, I don't want to catch tuberculosis from you dirty freaking hipsters and hippies. I don't want to be stuck in traffic. I don't want to get mowed down. Seattle itself is it's no Detroit yet, but it's certainly on the precipice of going that direction.
The homeless here has gotten so bad, Aaron, and and now that the weather has gotten warmer, I can't stand it. I was actually driving back. I was on Aurora. I don't know if you know that. It's kind of like a service road. You can do about 45 on it, but it has like lights in certain places and stuff. But you can still get a good clip going on it. And but it's a main arterial. Like there's buses on that road and everything like that. And I was driving, and some homeless guy actually tried to get hit by my car. Actually walked out, and it was so, like, visually it looked like I hit him. I mean, I knew I didn't because I would have felt the bump, but it was so close, like it had to be within inches, that I was able to avoid this guy. And he just literally walked right out in traffic, like trying to get hit. I mean, it was a terrifying experience. Not because I was worried about killing the guy, but it was a brand new car. I just bought it. It was only a month old.
Well, and then the other thing is they'd sue you or something, and it's just you don't visit communist countries and you don't visit communist cities. There's just no reason. The quality and caliber of people is gone down the toilet. Their victim mentality down there, especially the bums. And another thing I learned this work in security, John, you probably ran into this too. Just being in New York or dealing with bums in general. You can contract all sorts of diseases you don't want to get from those guys. They spit in your face, it gets into your eye. Now you got whatever, tuberculosis, tetanus,
hepatitis.
Yeah, hepatitis, and that, I got to get my vaccines and all that. And then, I'm on a motorcycle. What if some guy who's drunk walks out and, wipes me out too? It's just an unnecessary risk to go to Seattle. And I don't care about your damn fish market. I don't care where the first Starbucks was. I don't care how nice Mercer Island is. It's like, no, I'm going to go down to Yakima. I'm cutting over to Tacoma, and then I'm dropping south over in Portland. Same thing. I'm going to dodge Portland somehow.
Oh, Portland is as bad, if not worse.
Right.
You know what they call these bums now? I just saw this at work today on Drudge. They're called crusties. There's an article out of Fox News. Voluntarily vagrant homeless youth, a crusty urban challenge. They call them crusty. What is the names? Crusty punks, crusties, gutter punks, crumb bums, and dirty kids. So it's all these millennials that are voluntarily homeless.
Well, wait, what are they, like groupies or something that follow bums around?
No, they're actually homeless. That's their lifestyle that they're choosing. I guess that's the next phase of what I'm blanking on the name. What's hipsters, right? Being a hipster wasn't enough. Now you got to be a crusty,
or you get kicked out of your
sleep outside,
or you get kicked out of your parents' house by a court order.
Yeah, right.
Well, you will see a lot of this. This is worse in Portland. Those type of homeless are worse in Portland. We do have them in Seattle, but in Portland, it's really bad. It's all those white kids with dreadlocks.
Yep, that's what they said in this article. Yep.
And that's how you'll know. You see the white kids with the dreadlocks that smell, and they're just pretty much living out of a backpack, if that, and they're just, I don't know what they do with themselves, but
they're doing drugs and panhandling.
There's a lot of drugs. I mean, everything from pot, which is really out of control in Seattle. I mean, look, I'm not against making pot illegal and everything, but I don't like pot stores like within walking distance of where I live, just because of the crowd it attracts. It's
Right.
kind of like the same reason you don't want a fucking porno theater next to you. You know, it just makes it look skeevy. And we had a pot shot open here, 2 blocks from where I live, and I just hate that because you see all these white Rastafarians hanging out outside all the time. You know.
Well, weren't we now? I don't think this is like what you can call them crusties or whatever. But I remember coming to Seattle for the first time in 1998, and I went to Pioneer Square, and here's these kids, and they're fed. They're not missing out on anything, and they're hitting me up for money, and they're my age, and here I am. I'm 24. I own a piece of property already, and I'm like, get your ass back to Mercer Island. You guys are spoiled. You had don't tell me you were poor or brought up in the ghetto. You came from at least a middle income household, and you're doing it because you think this is cool and hip. And so I don't think this is like a millennial thing. I mean, everyone thinks millennials came up with hipsterdom. It's apparently everyone forgot about the Gen X grunge phase. Apparently that missed the history books. I'm like, yeah, those are the people that did it, and they continued on.
Now, one thing to keep in mind, Cappy, is that the fact that these people are in Seattle, there's no way to tell, but I would take a guess that most of them, or a significant percentage of them, are not from Seattle and were not there, I'd say, 6 years ago. I think a lot of these people were sent over here by cities that didn't want to. They realized that there was another city that was going to clean up the mess, that was going to spend money on homeless programs. So, and I know this from transit guys that I talked to off the record, of course, who said that in other cities, they would give the homeless people $50 and a bus ticket to Seattle, and of course they're going to take it.
Oh, sweet! That saves it saves the exporting city so much money. What, like California or like littler towns over in Washington State?
Well, I don't think they're even from Washington. I mean, there was a recent attack on a woman at a car dealership in Seattle. John might know some. Have also heard about it, but the guy was from some southern state. He moved here He had come here in 2016. So these people are coming here because the city is signaling, if you want free stuff, if you want to shoot up heroin paid for by somebody else, we will give it to you. The inability to connect the messages and incentives that you provide with the consequences. If you want to get rid of the homeless population, send signals that if you are homeless and you come here, you're not going to be welcome and you're not going to have a very good time, like panhandling and all this other stuff. But the problem is then it spills over to other cities in the region. Mm-hmm. And then that's been a huge controversy in my hometown because they've been wanting to put in a homeless men's shelter. And the culture in Bellevue I don't think parts of it, the culture, even though there's been a lot of population changes, I don't think that culture, that suburban culture, has really changed. So the people are not really interested in that. But again, I think that most of the homeless people that you see in a city aren't natives. There's obviously no way to tell, and you'd have to literally track them all down. But I mean, there was problems. I mean, back in the 80s, they did a documentary on Seattle homeless, but they were all young kids, a very different demographic, and all of them came from pretty bad homes. So a little bit different situation than what we got now. I think it's more people who are mentally ill, have drug addictions. You got your military veterans who are dealing with PTSD and stuff like that. So different problems, but again, they're being sent over here by cities that don't want to have to deal with it and aren't able to tax the productive sector of society to pay for it.
Did you see that there was good news out of Seattle today that the city council is going to repeal that Amazon tax?
Oh, they are. I didn't know. I didn't catch it.
Yeah. I saw that someplace. I was trying to look it up here real quick because we were talking about Seattle.
Let TJ talk about it because he's on ground level on that one.
Yeah, I actually covered it. I watched the proceeding. If you want to know what Seattle politics looks like, you got to watch that meeting. And I know for a lot of people of our political views, it's, you'd probably want to do something else. But people need to understand that this is how far. I mean, the council members voted to repeal this, but beforehand there were people who were getting up and accusing them of pushing the Trump agenda. I mean, we're talking about the Seattle City Council, which is in one of the most the most progressive people in one of the most progressive cities in America politically, and voting to repeal a tax that was going to get defeated at the ballot box. it gets what happens in Seattle. Like that will get you being accused of being.
And it was 7-9, right? Was that what it was?
It was 7-2.
I meant 7 out of 9 voted to repeal.
Yeah, 7 out of 9. Yeah.
And let me guess, that communist bitch was the one that didn't. What's her name?
I was going to say cunt, but you bitch will suffice in this case.
Yeah, Sawant did not. She obviously voted to keep the tax.
Well, that's the thing here. I mean, the Seattleites are. I mean, these people are left of fucking Lenin. You know, I mean, they're out of it. I mean, they're completely nuts. And it's very difficult, and they're loud too. That's the problem. Like, you know, because
they shut down the meeting. I mean, it got so bad that Sawant got up during the meeting when they were trying to take a vote and said, "You need to this is Sawant saying this." She said, "You need to stop yelling. I can't vote." Like they couldn't do the roll call for the vote because the people were being so loud, and it's again people who are not from Seattle. If you want to get an idea of what the politics, I mean, it really was a scene of anarcho tyranny where you had a crowd just screaming so loudly that the council just sat there and didn't know what to do. Because
how old was the ordinance or law? Wasn't it only like 2 months old?
Yeah,
It was a month old. The ordinance to repeal it was introduced yesterday,
right?
And so, I mean, we can speculate about why they actually decided to do it. I think
I know why they decided. Jeff Bezos said that I'm moving.
Did he say that?
No, he didn't say that.
Well, he's already moved. Oh, yeah. I just know what they said publicly. They said what they did is they crunched the numbers and knew that they were going to lose in November, and so it was just it was a losing battle, and they were trying to cut their losses.
Didn't they get a petition put together too, like the small businesses?
Yeah, you need like 17,000 to 19,000 signatures, and they got I think 45,000 or almost 50,000.
And then that would put it on the ballot to repeal it.
That would put it on the ballot.
Yeah.
But do they have? Is there any? They're worried about losing their office, like to who? Some other socialist professor or never worked a day in his life and some kind of trust fund? I mean, who's going to dethrone them, and are they going to vote anything differently this time?
Well, they're probably, you know, if you do push things a little too far, you know, not in Seattle, like you're not going to get a fucking Republican, but you're going to get some other Democrat that's going to be like, yeah, I'm all about, you know, progressivism and things like that. But look, I'm not a fucking commie, you know?
Yeah, that's what really, I think also happened with the head tax. You had people who are on the left, who are Democrats, who started like you had the head of the King County executive who came out and said he was opposed to it. You had all these other lawmakers saying it. And I think that they're seeing where this is going to go, and they're also very concerned about the business PR image of Seattle, because whether people like it or not, it is the economic engine of the state. And so if somebody does something to screw up the business climate there, then the state revenue is going to go down, and the state revenue has grown like incredibly high since 2012 or 2010. I think it's going to have gone up by like $20 billion.
Well, what's the base?
Construction is
no. I mean, what it went up 20 billion. 20 billion from what? 80 billion?
It was around 20 billion. It's like double. It's
doubled in 6 years.
But you have to take into consideration, Aaron, there was this huge downturn.
That's true.
So there was a downturn from, like, it hit us later. The real estate crash hit us at least a year later than it did the rest of the country.
Yeah. That was.
Do you remember that everybody was saying, "Oh, Seattle's immune to the the real estate crash"? And I mean, after the crash happened in mid 2000, because it didn't happen until hit here until mid 2007, where it had hit the rest of the country in early 2006 or something. And I had a buddy of mine that actually bought the condo above me, and the poor bastard paid in 2007. He paid $520,000 for it.
Is it finally worth 520?
Yeah, now it's back.
Well, now see, it's it was funny you said that, because it's the same observation I made when I had a sibling who was renting an entire house. It was a 2-story, I think 5-bedroom house by himself for $1,600 a month. That will not get you a little prison cell size studio apartment in at least in Bellevue. maybe in Seattle, which they are now selling the prison cell style apartments for like $700. But yeah, the real estate market didn't bottom out in our area until around 2012 or 2011, and then that's when it. So people who bought their houses or condos in 2007, like a friend of mine, they've had to wait until now or the last couple of years to buy or to sell and then buy something else. But then they find another problem. They sell their place and then nothing around them is affordable. So they got to move out of the area if they want to do that.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of people leaving Seattle because they simply can't afford it.
Yeah, they're all coming over here.
But Bellevue ain't Bellevue. You're in Bellevue?
No, I grew up in Bellevue and I was living there up until recently, and then I bought a house in the central part of the state.
Oh yeah. Central Washington is reasonable, but
it's changing fast. It's changing fast.
Yeah, but Seattle does. I mean, Seattle is. If you're a single person, myself personally, I couldn't deal like living in the middle of nowhere. I like to have all the amenities that go with living in a urban environment. I mean, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I have to deal with the fucking traffic and then the homeless and all that stuff. But at the same time, it's kind of like the situation with my condo. Like it increased in value. I mean, I bought my place years ago. I was only 24. I was like you, Aaron, first time I bought property. Mm-hmm. And this place now, I bought it for 151, and now it's worth, I don't know. My guess is pushing 600,000. I mean.
That real estate. That's I always banked on a more traditional IRA or something like that because I always like to keep real estate separate. But no, my real estate could probably easily pay for my retirement. And that's another reason I didn't sell. I was kicking around selling my place over in the Twin Cities. But then, and DT could speak to this, but TJ brought it up. Like, okay, you could sell it, but where are you going to move to?
Yeah, that's my challenge.
And that's the other thing is people, they're so short-sighted as they think, oh, my house went up in value. My house went up in value. It's like, okay, now you got to go buy the exact same house. And that's where inflation really kicks in. Is like, hey, your living expenses didn't go down. It's not the same as it was in 2001. It's tripled or it's at least doubled in the past decade. So, it's only if you pull off something like what TJ did or what I'm planning on doing. You sell the property in a hot market, and then you go buy it in a cheaper market, like a Tennessee or a Texas or a Dakotas or something, or in the middle of nowhere, Washington State.
Right. That is the problem. And when people are talking about how much their house is worth, it's all a matter of, well, what's the median? This is one of the hardest problems with comparing different areas and different prices and how much people make in one area. If you're making, $60,000 a year and you live in Central Washington, you're doing pretty good. If you're making $60,000 in the King County area, you're like lower middle class. You're
starving, actually.
Yeah. It's you can go now. That's changing in Wenatchee as far as residential is concerned. Like because all the people leaving Seattle are coming over here. But yeah, if you want to sell your house, you got to look at, well, how much is it going to cost to buy a new one? And if it's going to be the same amount, then you're really not. It's all a matter of where you're planning to put your wealth. And if you're putting your wealth into something that's of the same value, then you're not really making any money off of it. You're just switching the location of your home.
Right. It's not to you. And here's another thing. Houses don't pay dividends. There's no income generation. Matter of fact, they take maintenance. They cost.
Well, you got property tax and you got, like a condo, you have homeowners dues. And you have all the utilities that go with it and stuff like that.
But my point is your capital is not being employed if you own a house. Now I have rental property, so it is being employed in that sense. But most people, they don't have rental property. And so that they could brag about their house. Like, I have a $700,000 house. It's like, yeah, but it's if you invested it in like a mutual fund, okay, that'd pay you 2 to 3% of a dividend yield. And then you have income. But good for you. You have this piece of property that if you were to ever capitalize on it, you immediately have to reinvest it or move. And most people, I think every one of us except DT here, most of us can, we can be a TJ. We just like, pulling up stakes. We're single. I can be mobile. And even DT, you were thinking about being mobile there for a bit. I mean, you're kicking around South Dakota, New Zealand.
I think that's the smart way to do it. And when I was living overseas, there were, I lived in New Zealand for a while, and there were a lot of people from New Zealand that would go move their expat to England and they'd go make all the money in England or make the higher wages in Australia. And then when it was time to come home, they'd have a nice little nest egg to, you know, be able to live in the cheaper country with the wages that they earned in the higher cost areas. And I think that's what we've done here in the Twin Cities where I live is, I mean, we're making Twin Cities wages, but we basically stayed in our starter home and paid it off. And so now we're looking to, I would love to move to a lower cost area. And that's where you leverage that, you know, you leverage the house that you've paid off. You've got a nice little down payment there, or even just pay off the house entirely if you move to a lower cost area, and you've saved up, you've made your big city wages, and then are able to, you know, take that lower paying job in a lower cost area and take advantage of the decisions that you made. But you guys were talking about, if you my house went up blah blah percent, and then if you buy in the same area, it's really you're not gaining.
It's a moot point. And that's a problem that I know with a lot of people who are looking to retire sometime in the future, but they're from the Seattle area. Their houses are worth that they bought for the same price I bought my little, you know, small cottage house. They bought a decent sized McMansion that's now worth $1 million. The problem is they want to stay in the area. And so they're either going to have to downsize significantly and buy that. I think the other problem that it presents for people in a market where the housing prices are going up so much, you're almost thinking, should I just wait this thing out? But the risk is if you wait too long, you know, opportunities pass or whatever. But I'm almost wondering, you know, how long can this go on, and how much higher can it get before some sort of like stability? It's not even about high prices. I think the problem with the market is when you have instability, where it's not like where it's going up or down, going up and down, but where it's constantly going up, and so people aren't sure, should I buy now or should I buy later?
Well, I looked into it, and I've had my, not necessarily opinion, but viewpoint of the role that housing plays changed by the world reserve currency status of the United States. And whereas at the first housing crash, there were things that was going to make it crash, you know, people owning 3 houses, flipping, no rents, corrupt real estate developers. I mean, that thing was going to go down no matter what. Now what I'm afraid of is lending standards have been tightened up. Inventory is very tight. And what I'm afraid is, well, I'm not afraid. I know what's driving it now is we printed off all this damn money. It's got to go somewhere. It did not go into consumer goods like, you know, oil or milk or bread, but it sure the hell has gone into anything you borrow money for. So tuition has gone up. Housing prices has gone up. Stocks and bonds have gone up. And you say, well, wait, you don't borrow money. We don't, but corporations have borrowed trillions to do trillions of dollars worth of buybacks. And what I really fear for younger people, as much as I detest millennials and detest socialists and detest their entitled mentality, especially in cities, if millennials want to go and live there, if young people want to go and live there, it's almost, you're certainly not going to buy a property. You're certainly priced out of home ownership now if you're going to live in a even a moderately hot town. Like even if you go to Milwaukee, we're not talking popular places like Denver, Seattle, LA, New York, where everybody wants to go and live the Sex of the City lifestyle. If you just want to go to the main town, you are likely not going to be able to buy property there, just like you never could buy property in New York or LA when we were kids. But even rent now, because housing prices have gone up so much, to rent has, as if you didn't screw over the millennials enough with charging them inflated prices for tuition. Now we're going to just stab them for rent because that's how expensive. And I don't know if it's happening in Seattle, and you guys could tell me, but certainly in the Twin Cities, and certainly in Las Vegas, and certainly in Denver, they're not building regular apartments anymore. You know what they're all building now? Luxury apartments. And you can get a pool, and there's a bar upstairs, and there's a lounge. And for a cheap $2,000 a month for a puny little studio space, you hipster, cool, millennial, recent college graduate can live here. And they just do it, man. They just go right to the city. They suffer commutes, they suffer homelessness, they suffer whatever else. But the biggest stab, I'm kind of curious what's going to be the bigger money grab, the tuition all these young people are paying for overpriced degrees, or the rent they're going to pay for their 20s and their younger 30s in overinflated, overhyped up cities that really don't have all that much to offer.
Wasn't this just the boomers just squeezing everything out of this system until
Yes
isn't
and
that
no.
what it
Yes,
is?
it depends on how long the boomers held the property. But like right now, if I held my property back in Minneapolis proper, I could charge them an arm and a leg. Now I'd have to because taxes have gone up either. So you can't necessarily say the property owners are screwing over. They got to cover their costs. But the new developers coming and building all these luxury townhomes, all these luxury apartments, and you can't even say they're malicious or being greedy. That's what the market is paying. And so if you have all this money being flooded in, it costs that much to buy that property, it costs this much to build this type of housing on top of it. You're going to have to charge X amount in rent for people who want to live in that area. And these kids are going to pay. They don't have, like, this is again why I kind of respect TJ. Don't tell him I said that. I hope he didn't hear that. I respect TJ because he can work remotely. And he doesn't have to be in the hipster cool area. He's like, screw it, I'm out of here. And he's got himself a very nice man cabin up in the mountains. It's really cool. And it's very cool because he keeps the temperature at like 31 degrees, even though it's 72 outside. But he's willing to play the Henry David Thoreau, not necessarily.
I'm thinking more of Dick Prenneke.
Yeah, not hermit, but he's like, I don't need this anymore. But for the vast majority of younger people, the inflated housing prices, which demand higher rents to cover their costs and maintenance and finance, is really going to screw them over. But again, they told me I'm a racist, sexist, homophobe, old fuddy-duddy who doesn't know anything, so screw them.
Did you see the CPI?
2.8%.
Yep, 2.8, above 2.
So did you guys, did any of you follow Doug Casey? He's a kind of a crisis investor, and he's got a newsletter that I've subscribed to. And I got one of his recently that was relevant to this because what he was doing is he was looking at the 1970s and he's comparing the median house price and then say a school teacher's salary. And what he found is that a teacher's salary could pay for half of the total cost of a house.
Right.
And so he was saying, but then you look at the interest rates. So, people nowadays say, well, the interest rates are so low for housing and mortgages and stuff like that. But then you got to say, okay, but how much did things cost compared to how much people were making? The reason they had high interest rates back then is because, they were obviously not going to just throw out, let anybody take out loans. But I think people had the ability to pay for stuff in especially for housing. That is not the same as today. There's no way, unless you're one of those in the right area and you're making a killing as a teacher, and there are some places like that. But the average one, they're barely going to be able to afford rent. They're going to be working with whoever they're living with and trying to afford stuff. So that it was interesting, Aaron, you were talking about the world reserve currency situation with the U.S., and that is totally what's going on. There is no way. Germany tried doing the same thing during the Weimar Republic when they did the hyperinflation. And the other problem was they couldn't export their inflation like we've done. We've taken all that money that we've printed up and we've shipped it to some other countries. Where that can get really ugly is if China and Russia and any other countries decide to go with some other alternative currency and they start. Now, I think we're kind of in a weird mutually assured destruction because China also needs us to buy their stuff. And if our economy goes down, we stop buying. And if we stop buying, they stop building and manufacturing. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. But it seems like they're making smarter long-term plans, obviously, than we are.
Well, that's what I like. One of the things I like about Trump, I mean, forget about, the immigration and all these other things people talking about, but I like the way he's renegotiating all these trade deals because basically, the United States was, selling out all the politicians that were making these trade deals with foreign countries like Canada and Mexico and China and the EU. Basically, we're just giving it away, and, basically fucking over the American worker.
That's what really actually frustrates me so much about the whole free trade debate. And that's been a big thing within the Libertarian Party the discussion over free trade, and then there's people who favor protectionism. And the problem is that people's concept of free trade is a lot of people think of free trade agreements like NAFTA or TPP. And my whole thing is, if the trade agreement or trade deal has one country opening up its markets to another country's goods, but that's not reciprocated, that's not free trade. It benefits. It's like putting weights on one person's legs during a foot race and then saying that that's, a fair way to judge who's faster than who.
Yeah, it's called affirmative action, but in international trade.
Well, right. We've opened up, in a lot of ways, we've opened up over the years our markets to other countries to export stuff. And a lot of them haven't done the same. And that's why these trade agreements are so big, because it's like, well, for this country, we're not going to have tariffs this high. And then for other countries, we're not going to have tariffs at all. And then for those countries, they'll let some of our stuff in. But because Washington State, we export a lot of our stuff. So obviously trade is a big deal for us. But then you start reading and talking to people about what these agreements actually look like. And it's almost like they're picking the winners and losers. It's just have a single piece of paper that says trade will not be interfered with between these two countries. And that's it. But everybody
there's an interesting thing when they're speaking of trade. There was an article today that talked about, here's the number that Trump doesn't like to talk about when he's talking about our trade imbalance, and they threw in, and I don't think this is a good thing. It's sort of, in my mind, it's kind of a point that backfires on these people. That we're only looking at products, we're only looking at goods when we're looking at our trade imbalance. And then they said, well, when you look at how many companies we've sold to overseas people, all of a sudden we've got a quote trade surplus. And I'm like, so wait a minute. So the good news is we're selling all of our companies to people overseas. I can understand if they are like startups, like an idea, a tech company or something that kind of built up from nothing. But I mean, do we really want to be selling all of our profitable companies overseas to make up for the trade imbalance? I don't know.
It depends on what we're selling. Like when IBM sold its computer division to China, Lenovo, I'm not too worried about it, because this talks about what kind of economy, or more specifically, what kind of jobs do you want to have? As much as I lament and rue the loss of, say, like steel jobs and all that, which I think we should get back if we had truly fair trade. You got to realize, like, okay, do you want to work in a steel plant, or do you want to sit in an air-conditioned office programming code?
Right.
Do you want to be soldering computer circuit boards for Lenovo computers, or do you want to have Chang do it while you go? And it's almost a direct, because we're getting to this point in the economy. I won't bore people with the details, where we have so much wealth and we have the world's reserve currency that we can make jobs for precious little girls with their masters in social work to go and make believe that they actually have a career and a profession.
Right.
We're starting to enter a bizarro world, but unless the government forces you to sell it, I have faith in private companies not to undersell or give away assets, productive assets in the United States in the form of companies, unless they want to get rid of it or they have better use for their capital. And so I'm not terribly worried about
and
that. It's not like we're selling our crown jewels to China in some kind of trade deal. It's usually our lesser profitable divisions. We have more profitable ventures to go on. And when you look at it, I mean, I don't know if you guys ever visited China. Glorious Carl did, Matt Baldoni did, and it's polluted. Yeah, they're growing by leaps and bounds, and it's better than communism. They are improving, but there's a cost to having a purely industrialized nation that is profitable but low profit margins, and you got to go based off of volume. Whereas pharmaceuticals, software, all that other stuff, the majority of it doesn't even have pollution. It's just ideas and figuring out chemistry or formula or biology. Those are much more profitable, have much better working conditions, and create a lot more profits for us here. But I still would like to see a good steel industry. I'd like to see something for young men and boys and industrious women. I'd love to see nothing better than Gary, Indiana, fire up its steel mills again, and let's make some good cash.
Don't you have to take into account the world's reserve currency and how much foreigners are buying our debts and basically giving us money by buying our debts. Shouldn't that factor into the whole trade imbalance thing? Because we're buying their stuff with dollars that they're investing in, basically.
Well,
and
and
so
I went
that's
into
a huge advantage, right?
Oh, it's huge. Oh, it's insane. It's resulting in what I want to call, I'll write a piece about this anyway, called The Revenge of Generation X. But the short version is, until the concept of world reserve currency and the unlimited printing press came along, and we realized we could print off money and not be the Weimar Republic, Gen X had every right to think, man, the economic collapse is coming. We keep spending more money on baby boomers. The baby boomers and their Medicare and Medicaid is going to tank it. Or it's going to break the camel's back. This is bad. But you want to talk about luck and undeserved luck. Let me explain to you how bizarre a world this is. Where did the housing crisis originate? What country?
I got my theory. Okay. Country. Huh.
Which country did the housing crisis originate in?
See, I was gonna that's what kicked it off, but I don't know.
Take a guess, anybody. It's not that hard. Where did it start?
The United States?
The United States, right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought it was a trick question. Okay.
No, it's not a trick question. I was thinking like, well, you didn't think it started in Iceland, did you? No, it started here in the United States, and then we spread it through our bonds and all that other stuff. So a U.S. originated crisis that we are responsible for, not only threw our economy into a tailspin, but we threw the whole world into a great recession. So at first, the value of the US dollar went down, but it was such a panicked event. Guess what ended up happening? Guess where people started seeking, or what people started seeking for safe havens? The US dollar.
I know.
It's like, I just got herpes from my girlfriend, but damn, I want to get laid. I'm going to go sleep with her again. We caused the problem, and the rest of the world is so screwed up. And that's the key thing to understand this. The rest of the world is more corrupt, less productive, and more criminal than we are. And so all these countries that they're saying, oh, the BRIC countries, China, India, Russia, and Brazil, those countries are kleptocracies. Those countries, they may be growing, but they are corrupt shitholes. And hang on, China, let me finish. And whereas production is kind of important to have a world reserve currency, and the U.S. has that, having faith in a currency also requires you have faith in that government. And when you look at their corruption index, these countries, there's no country out there that has, one, a significant amount of economic production to act as a resource or a cachet of value to give a currency value, and another country that is not as corrupt as a China, Russia, et cetera. So the United States, and this is where the revenge of Gen X comes in, we can print off as much, not as much, but we can print off money to pay for all of our crap. And the rest of the world will buy it. They will, because they're doing the exact same thing. They're printing off their money because they're, like Japan, China, their currencies have their own value and cachet, their own economic production to back it up, not to the extent of the United States, but because of their corruption. That's the benefit of not having a corrupt economy, is that people are going to trust us internationally, and they'll buy our stuff with dollars. They'll buy our dollar-denominated assets, and they'll hold on to it so it doesn't circulate. So what's going to end up happening, and this is why I'm kind of somewhat optimistic, the revenge of Gen X, is that we're going to get the exact same treatment, I think, as the boomers. We're going to collect Social Security. We're going to see Medicare and Medicaid. And if you look at the deficits we've been running, we've paid the least amount of tax given the amount of government spending, because we've been running so much deficit. So we got all this government spending, and we only paid for a fraction of it.
Oh, just Obama alone doubled it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And so if you look now, this doesn't talk about sociological, psychological stuff, divorce, feminism, all that. I'm just talking finances. We will have paid the least amount in taxes for the most amount of consumption in any society, culture, generation.
Do you think they'll raise the retirement age, though, for us? I think they're probably going to do that.
Like Social Security can be saved simply by raising the retirement age a couple of years. Now, the real problem is Medicaid or Medicaid. I always get those confused. Medicaid. and Medicare. Those are pretty much insolvent.
Yeah, they said by 2020 something, right? Didn't that just come out? It's going to be
Well, yeah,
insolvent.
they just said it's closer to be. I mean, it's so much more is going out than going in,
Right.
and the price of healthcare just, I don't know. Aaron might know what's the inflation rate of healthcare. I mean, it's
Oh
not.
God, 8 to 10% depends on what you want to look at.
Yeah, it's pretty extreme. Um, and we keep having this push now to have a more and more socialist type, if not outright socialist healthcare system. There's all these things that are pushing it that way. So, that's a problem with any sort of government program. Once it starts, it never goes away. You know what I mean? All these things, like, they're meant to be temporary, and they're still around, and they're just still sucking the taxpayer dry.
That's why I think you guys need more heroin, free heroin for the druggies programs. I think you need a free heroin program in Seattle. That'd be
Well,
great.
we have the needle places where they can come in and shoot up, which is insane, but yeah, it's pretty bad. Well, and I just wanted to touch on this homeless problem because I have a friend. I lost touch with him because since he moved out of Seattle, but he was a MSW, Master of Social Work, and he worked with homeless people. And the problem with homeless people, it's the reason it's so challenging is it's multi-vector problem. They have substance abuse issues, mental illness. They have they usually have a zero support structure. So it's not like simply, let's say, they're an alcoholic or drug addict, both, whatever, and then, sending them to a rehab and cleaning them out. Because they have all these other issues, they don't have a support structure. They don't have a family, or they're, disowned by it, or their family is so dysfunctional it's not worth to be around. They don't have any healthy friendships or social relationships. They don't have any basic life skills.
No,
So
it's too bad for them, I guess.
but trying to work with these people is very, very difficult because it's not just addressing one aspect of them. They pretty much, it's not just the drug abuse. It's not just the fact that they have no life skills. It's all these different problems, congealing.
Here, I hate to say this, but it's true because I am an asshole. You know what that is?
What?
Survival of the fittest, saying they should never have been born in the first place. That's really what it is. If they got that many problems and they require that many external sources from taxpayers and guidance counselors and this and that and housing, these people would not have survived in the olden days. That's what it's nature saying, you shouldn't be here. But we keep
I do believe, though,
them
like,
alive.
If you go back, like, before we had this welfare state, things like that would be addressed. If you had a small town with, like, a church, for example, all right, well, that could suffice. That could deal with all the different issues. All right, we're going to dry you out. Okay, as far as your support structure, you have a church community that you're part of.
Well, that's why the whole thing about visiting people in prison, why Christianity requires that, is because prisons back then, if you didn't visit them, they would starve. That they depended. Prison was just a place, and it required people to come in and give them what they needed to survive. And so that's why Jesus talked about visiting people in prison. So nowadays Christians go to prison to go witness and all that kind of stuff, but it was a physical reality back then.
Yeah. So so Aaron, what I'm saying is when we had a more tribalistic society, like, smaller communities, or at least, where everybody was kind of invested in the well-being of other people to, some degree, they all kind of saw each other as, members of our community. People weren't as atomized as they are now. Those kind of issues would all be addressed. They'd say, all right, this is so-and-so, and he's got these issues, and you'd see the pastor and stuff like that, and they would help and, do what they could for him. And it would be taken care of, like, by charity. But now you have to have, all these, government agencies and stuff like that. And in many ways, they're enabling them. Like at the city council meeting, or just a clip of it I saw in the news. I don't watch the whole freaking thing because I'd shoot myself. But they had a former homeless woman that was saying, no, these people don't need more homeless encampments. These people need, interventions. Don't enable their drug abuse and their destructive lifestyle. You need to intervene in them, and you get them off, because they're costing the city so much money in so many different ways. Because you look at the healthcare costs, like every time. I mean, any of these like homeless shelters, I mean, the amount of, you look at just the ambulance data of how, how many emergency services have to be brought to these places because these people, their bodies are dying because of the way they live and what they put in their bodies and, whatever. So there's all that going on, and who foots the bill for that? So just economically speaking, it makes sense to just intervene in these people's lives and say, look, you got to get your shit together. And some of these people are like schizophrenic. There's medications for that shit now, and some basic life skills. Some of these people never had to fucking buy a tube of toothpaste in their life. I mean, just things like that. And if because it's done by the government, it's fucked up. But if it was done by, a local community, in my opinion, it could work, because it used to work before we had this welfare state.
Well,
I just wonder how many are, what's the percentage now of people who are actually unable to take care of themselves? That's different than people that, like we talked about earlier, the crusties, the people that choose to just be parasites, like we hate on. We don't like those people here. And I just wonder, do we as a society now even let people hit rock bottom? Part of, becoming a better person and deciding to take the bull by the horns and improve your life is, people will talk about hitting rock bottom. And I just wonder if we don't allow that, we're not allowing these crusties to hit rock bottom, clearly. Does that even happen anymore? Do people, oh man, I hit rock bottom, and you think, well, no, actually you didn't, because you actually had this safety net underneath you and you never did hit rock bottom.
Well, let me speak to a point that's even worse than simply just a safety net. There was a homeless shelter that they wanted to build literally right next to my building. I pretty much single-handedly stopped it from happening. And I tried everything. I went, there was Catholic Community Services was of Western Washington. We're trying to build a homeless shelter right next to me here on Dexter Avenue. Now,
Aren't those the people involved in immigration? The Catholic charities?
I don't know,
or
they're a
something?
bunch of fucking commies. But anyway, they're I met with them. We had a meeting with them. We sat down. I was the president of the condo board here, and I met with them and I realized this was going to be devastating for, not just the property values of my condominium complex, but, the surrounding area. And so, we tried meeting with these people. They hadn't closed on the property yet. And because other people had tried to develop that property, and we were stopping it, saying, tying them up in court and stuff like that, because they were going to block our view, yada yada. And so basically, we tried to reason with these people. Said, look, you haven't closed on the property. We'd even be willing to, any earnest money that you put up, we'll even cover that. Just don't build here. And they basically told us, there was a nice meeting. They basically told us to go fuck ourselves. So I said, all right, fine. You want to play hardball? I'll play hardball. I didn't say this to him, but so basically what it did was a Freedom of Information Act. There's a city version of it here. And I found out, so I did a tremendous amount of research. I literally turned it into a second job where I did all the research on how these things are funded. Because I said, there's no way they're getting this from the little basket they pass around at the Catholic Church, because no one even goes there anymore in this town, which is the least religious city in the country. So I found out that they get their money from the city, the county, and the state. And there's federal funding as well that's dispersed by the state. So I filed a Freedom of Information request with the Seattle Department of Planning and Development, I think it's called. I forget now. And I got all the internal emails, everything like that. And I got everybody else that was and all the information and spreadsheets and everything like that of every single agency that was applying for these funds. And I broke it all down, and I contacted every single agency. And I told them, don't give it to this other program, not to the one here, because if you do, we're going to sue. We're going to do this. It's not going to get built. These other, I mean, I'm kind of speeding it up here, but I ended up stopping the program from getting built. Now they ended up going somewhere else and getting funding somewhere else. But the same charity group, Catholic Community Services of Western Washington, back to the enabling thing, they actually have a wet house, we call it, where they have homeless people there, what they call chronic inebriates, a nice way of saying just drunks. Mm-hmm. And they actually put them up in a homeless shelter and give them booze.
Woohoo! Party.
And then they wonder why everybody comes there.
Where is it? I mean, I could get a free shot of something. I go drive down.
Yeah, you stop in like, yeah, you got a 12-year-old scotch there, something kind of smoky, and I'm not kidding. That literally exists. It's on literally. I live on one side of the South Lake Union neighborhood. If people in Seattle would know that, but it's on the other side of Lake Union, which is very beautiful, very picturesque, especially this time of year. It is actually beautiful. It is stunning. It's a beautiful place to to jog and walk, and it's truly spectacular. And they got away. It's literally on the other side of the fucking lake, and it's like, I mean, they're basically just giving these people booze to just.
Do you know why? Do you know why they're doing this, and why they have needle programs, and why they have heroin, and why they enable this entire class of people?
It's cheaper.
It's profitable. Right? This is the formula, or the variable we're missing from the formula. Yes, in the olden days, you would allow people to hit rock bottom. You would not have enabled these people to be, to be druggies, to be given booze, to have free lodging and healthcare, to the point that they're in their 40s, 50s, or even up to the point they die, because they never get off of it. Because the church or whatever private charities or people, one, they actually cared about the people they were trying to help, saying, you need to get off this. And two, they also had self-respect. But it was truly a charity. It wasn't a Joel Osteen church running it. It was actual churches that were carrying out the Lord's work or adhering to their Christian code, or people who were just, trying to help out. When the government got involved, and this is more pronounced than anything else nowadays, especially what girls are majoring in, what are 3 generations of social work majors, sociology majors, psychology majors, government administrators, what are they supposed to do if there's not enough government programs?
They'll go on the dole.
They'll go on the dole, but they're not going to go on the. This is all this is they are using these homeless people and the drug addicts or whatever else to have you to make money, so that they have jobs when they get out of college with their worthless social work program degrees. That's all this is. And if you think about how truly evil this is, of these, and hypocritical of these leftists who, we care so much about the poor, bullshit. They want a government check. They want a government job. They want a government pension. Instead of working hard like us, instead of working, producing something of real value, they will take these poor souls and they will enable them and keep them on the dope. They'll keep them on the booze. They'll give them housing, and they'll use other people's money because they take a cut and they get their salaries paid for it. That's all this is. It's mere work avoidance for these people. They didn't want to major in accounting. They didn't want to major in engineering. They didn't want to become a tradesman. They didn't want to work in the logging fields. They didn't want to do jack all fucking shit. What they wanted was an easy government job that came after their easy little college degree while they're partying it up. The real reason you have homeless in Seattle is because government workers, a segment of them, I'm not talking to the people that build the roads or cops or fire department, but the social programs, those employees want a job, and they will gladly make a person be addicted to heroin and coke and booze or whatever else and suffer mental illness so long as they can make money off of that person.
Here's why I said it was cheaper. I agree with everything you said there, Aaron. Here's why I initially said it was cheaper, and maybe it's both, is that you'll catch leftists sometimes. I don't have any leftist friends anymore, but I used to. And you'll catch them in moments of honesty sometimes. And when you talk about the welfare state and you talk about, what we're talking about here of enabling people, they will have a moment of honesty and what they really think of these people. And they'll say, well, if we don't pay them, they'll burn our cities down.
Oh, I had a guy just like this cuck on the swing dance scene. Oh, I hate his guts so much. He said the exact same thing. He was like, well, I don't mind paying a little bit of tax as long as they don't, invade my house or anything. I'm like, you pussy.
Yeah, and it's literally, they view it when in their moments of honesty, that when they're truly being honest on how they view the situation, it's, we're paying these people off. This is a bribe, this is extortion, whatever you want to call it, so that they don't burn our cities down and they don't riot. That's how they view it.
Danegeld. It's Danegeld. That's what they paid the Vikings not to invade.
Yeah, there you go.
And guess what the Vikings did? They came back next year and they invaded again because, hey, you paid us again.
Yeah, the thing is,
like
at least
Muslim tribute too, right? That's the whole reason why the Marines exist, was the tribute to the Muslims that needed to be paid to be able to sail through the Mediterranean. And
tribute the Chinese, Genghis Khan. Every dictator had tribute.
Attila the Hun, they all did it.
Right, but they never pretended that they were trying to do them a service, or that they were doing it for some sort of higher purpose other than just their own. The Vikings didn't patronize the people when they came to pay. They said, "Give us." They were very honest about it. They said, "Give us the gold, and we won't destroy your village and take away your women and all that stuff."
TJ, hold on, let me interrupt. Are you saying the Vikings didn't have master's degree in Viking managerial studies? They didn't have a degree in rape and pillage studies?
Well, they were.
Now that's a degree worth getting. I'd love to see what the final exam's like.
Oh God.
Sorry, TJ. Go ahead. TJ.
No, I was just saying, like, there's a difference between somebody who's just an honest criminal, or an honest thief, or somebody who just, they don't pretend or carry on as though they're doing it for anything other than just stealing or taking stuff, as opposed to somebody who not only does that, but then insults your intelligence and insists that you confirm. It's almost like somebody who like a kidnapper who keeps telling the person they're holding hostage, "I'm doing this to protect you. It's for your own good," and rather than just you're crazy loon who just wants to keep someone holed up in your house.
Well, and speaking of kidnapping and holding hostages, that's another reason why I can't think. I mean, I hate communists, don't get me wrong, and I hate Nazis, don't get me wrong. But man, I don't think I hate anything more than teachers, because teachers pull that. They are such cowards. They always run and hide behind the kids, put a bullet and a gun to the kid, said, "Give us more money," or the kid gets it. And then they act all sanctimonious and holier than, faces that I could break of teachers.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's the leadership for sure.
Specifically, teacher union presidents.
Yep.
These are the ones that always say, when they're demanding more raise and more bennies, they're always saying, "It's for the children." My ass, it's for the children. You don't give a fuck about the children.
Yeah, the superintendents, the principals. I mean, that's a racket right there. I mean, you see how the principals move all around the country and all around the states and stuff like that, and just hop from one school district to another, and just and the wages get inflated. I can't remember. I mean, what's the Minneapolis school district principal or high school principal get? It's crazy how
I'm sure it's six figures or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I know the
six figures isn't much now. I'm thinking like 180 a year, something like that. It's crazy.
But I know the superintendents get these insane packages, 400,000 a year, and they don't even last a year or 2 years, and they get fired, or they're about to get thrown out because they didn't discipline the black kids or whatever else.
They usually get severance pay too, or get
and they get severance, and then they go work in a nonprofit somewhere else. Oh yeah, it's a corrupt racket.
Hold on, guys. I'll be right back.
Okay. Sean got a call from a hot chick.
Okay. No, I didn't answer. No, but I was going to say the
unions, teachers.
Yeah, the teachers. Anything run by the government. The other example I was going to get, because we talk about teachers in the institution where the money is all going to really administrative costs and this bullshit created overhead. It's not actually going to the students directly. You know what I mean? There's all these buffers in between, and they're all taking their cut and this, that, and the other.
But a lot of it goes to special ed too. It's like a mandate to mainline people. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of good in theory and it sounds moral, but the costs, I mean, you have to have one teacher per student, per student. And it just, it's really expensive.
Well, it's really bad in Washington State regarding the teachers, because it's actually in the Washington State Constitution that they actually have to provide. I forget actually how it's in there, but if you actually look at our state constitution,
it says, it says that I've covered this issue for my job. It says that they have to provide everybody with a basic education and has to be equitable. And the problem is that basic education is can be, well, I mean, they passed a law defining basic education, but you got to wonder what the founding fathers of Washington State, when they wrote that, what their idea of a basic education was.
Yeah, they didn't mean one teacher for every special needs child. That's insanity. But also, there actually has, but there's been case law that the state has been taken to court trying, because the state wanted to spend, interestingly enough, the state wanted to spend more money on other government programs, not on education, and I can't remember the name of the state representative or senator, whatever his name is. He was a real advocate for the homeless and everything, and he was trying to take money that was going to education and putting it into all these drunk houses and needles for the heroin addicts and stuff like that. And actually the state was taken to court and lost, and they said, no, you got to put more money in education.
Wow.
And but the point I was trying to make earlier, sorry about that, but a buddy of mine worked in he used to make extra money. He worked ER shifts in different hospitals around the greater Seattle area. And one of the hospitals he used to do ER shifts in was the VA, and he quit doing it because he said it's so inefficient. He goes, they get more money, per employee working there, but none of it is going to healthcare. It's all going to this overhead. None of it's actually going to deal with the patients and to the doctors and stuff like that. It's all going for all this administrative bullshit.
What that kind of reminds me of is I was reading about World War II and how the frontline soldiers, like Easy Company and Band of Brothers with the 101st, they would always get the crappy cigarettes. They'd always get the crappy food. Their stuff would never show up on time. And the reason is because the stuff would, be unloaded from the ships, and immediately some guy gets his cut of the best stuff. And then it passes along through the chain. And by the time it actually gets to the guys who are actually fighting, they get the bottom of the barrel. Like most of the stuff's been skimmed off. For whatever reason. But it's kind of the same thing with funding. When they send money somewhere, you got to ask yourself, how much of that money is actually going to go towards what you claim it's going to go towards rather than overhead costs or administrative costs. And it's pretty amazing when you look at some of the places, how much they actually spend or how little they spend on something that, I mean, we're putting aside whether they should even be spending that money at all, whether that should be left to the like private sector, or if it's just not a good idea at all, regardless of who's doing it. But then you've got the inefficiency of it, like you were saying with the VA.
But see, I hate to call it inefficiency. And that's what I'm trying to even advance people on the right to realize. This is conscience. This is purposed. I don't
believe just a part of it. Yep.
Yeah. I don't believe for a second these girls majoring in the little social work programs give a damn about the poor or the kids. They know exactly what they're doing, and maybe it hasn't fully crystallized. Maybe what gets them into it is that they're lazy. But when they get there, they darn well know that they're there to make their money. They don't care about the special needs kids. They don't care about the children. And it's not that like, oh, they were naive and dumb and oh, they're women. And I don't mean to pick on women, but disproportionate. That's who is employed in these fields. Certainly are men in this field. But by the time you're 30, you damn well know what side your bread is buttered on, and you abuse these kids and these junkies and these homeless or whatever, the blacks, the kids, the minorities, the whatever it is. I mean, even charities themselves, if you look at their overhead, like the Susan G. Komen Foundation, their CEO, I think, makes $600,000 a year. How dare you run a charity and pay yourself a salary of $600,000 a year? It's so blatantly obvious these are money-making operations, cowardly hiding behind noble charities or noble intentions. And as TJ pointed out, it's one thing for an honest crook, he's got to risk his life to put a knife up to you or a gun, or you might have a gun. These people are just despicable hypocrites and cowards where they go and claim moral superiority. And that's just where, and so I'm trying to wake people up a little bit. No, this isn't. You can even jump over the argument like, well, no, it's not for the show. No. It's a money making out. No, you don't care about the poor. It's all about you. Yeah. And that's where we got to get up in their ass and get in their face.
Yeah, I think they care, but they just care about themselves more. It's
right.
It's a gradation of caring. You can care about all kinds of things and probably truly care about it. Like, you want to do good in your job. Teachers. I mean, the teachers of my kids, they love the kids, and I can tell.
I think some of it
it is just the way that it is. They're going to care about themselves more, as we all would.
I think what happens is when you discover that what you believed for your whole, pivotal years growing up and being educated, what do you do when you discover that your education was worthless, that you spent all this time and energy and money into something that didn't go anywhere, or that's, you've got to, you confront it and you almost have to push it away and keep going forward, or you have to make the very painful decision to make major life changes. And as Cappy and I have been talking about this entire week, most people do not want to make the change. They don't want to do the hard work. I'm not like trying to pretend like it's easy. It's very difficult to reshape your perception of reality so that's more accurate. But it's something that the mature adult does, and it may not occur overnight. But that's what separates people. Like I would say, those who strive to be better, and maybe not in a moral sense, but just more mature. Emotionally and psychologically, because they understand that in the long term it's better for them to do that rather than to continue doing what they're doing and block out what
Oh, we lost you, TJ.
Hey, you're breaking up a little bit. You're making good points, I can tell.
It's the Russians.
It's
It's the Russians. TJ, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay, good, because we're on the same Wi-Fi. I was kind of like, how did you fall off and I didn't?
It's probably the Russians. Putin is probably messing with us. That seems to be the go-to answer now.
Oh, you know what I wanted to bring up? Speaking of, this whole leftist.
Let me guess. This is going to come out of left field because it's good. I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of left field. Robert De Niro's "Fuck Trump."
Oh, yeah.
What about it?
Well, you probably didn't even hear about it, did you, Aaron?
No. That's why I'm asking John. John, tell people about it.
Okay, so basically, the Tony Awards, it's an award ceremony. It's like the Academy Awards for Broadway, and I don't know if he was coming out to present. I just saw the clip. I didn't watch the fucking show, but he just came out, walks right up to the microphone, and goes, "Fuck Trump," and he goes, "It's not even let's get rid of Trump. It's fuck Trump." Now that's bad enough, but what's really scary is he got a fucking standing ovation from all these fucking champagne liberals in the audience. I couldn't fucking believe it. I mean, the level of this country. Could you imagine if people talked that way about a fucking Obama? I mean, It would never happen. So this whole idea of saying, well, it's both on the right and the left, bull fucking shit.
You don't have primetime award shows doing it.
And it wasn't even a political venue like it was, because I remember someone comparing it to like Clint Eastwood when he was talking to the empty chair at the Republican convention. I said, that was at a fucking Republican convention, a political event. This is a fucking award show for, the best Broadway screenplay or whatever. And he just comes out there and goes, fuck Trump.
I'm deadly. The left has a monopoly. They own it 100% on mental illness, on a nationwide level mental illness. I'm sure we know that single mom who votes Democrat because she cares about children. She really does care about children. Well, TJ, weren't you pointing this out that we're kind of upset about what is this Mindy Minaj or whatever? She did some kind of speech at some kind of graduation ceremony, and you're saying that got you angry. But when you look at how people are frothing at the mouth over Trump every day, day in, day out, that it's like, when do you unplug? When do you? That's all they got. They're mentally ill.
And to be fair, I'm gonna I don't want to say skewer, but I'm gonna just criticize not both sides. But I kind of saw the same thing. Well, one, when I was in high school and George W. Bush was president, but then also when Obama was president, there was just not a lot of people, but there were some people who were just fanatical, obsessed with these conspiracies, like Glenn Beck style conspiracies, and they just wouldn't shut up about it. They would just hear his name and they'd be, like you were saying, frothing. But I mean, now it's like on steroids and energy drinks and like high octane, cocaine fueled, just every day. It's like the end of the world is here. And then they do it the same day. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting when the rhetoric is so ramped up to apocalyptic levels, and this is rhetoric you hear in the middle of a war about the enemy. You don't hear that in a country that is still domestically at peace with itself, and so it's just like, guys, I don't obviously agree with everything he's doing, and there's some stuff that he does that bothers me, but it's the same thing with, I've just learned, you look at what they do and you interpret it that way. Like, do you like his policy or do you not like his policy? Do you like what he said or do you not like what he said? But people think, what do I think of a politician? It's like, what are we talking about? Like, what specific policy do you want to discuss? I know that's kind of it's most people aren't really interested in that, but I also just can't. It's emotionally exhausting to follow it. And I spent
Isn't that like it's emotionally exhausting. I agree with you. The problem is it's almost impossible to get away from.
Right. That's the problem. I literally, last week I was on vacation, but I was really just doing remodeling work with my uncle on my house. And we were working all day long, and I did not check my internet, didn't do any social media stuff. And I felt very refreshed. And then I come back and check, I'm back on social media. And it's just, you literally have to unplug from social media. I was chatting about this with Cappy today about the dilemma, because on one hand, you don't want to be exposed to that so much. It's like being exposed to radiation. You got to go detox or whatever. But then at the same time, if you don't stay up to date on this stuff, you end up one of those people who doesn't know what's going on and doesn't understand, why
you're in the cattle car.
Well, I'm thinking more of like for people who follow Dalrock's blog. One of the things he talks about is just how traditional conservatives or social conservatives who take young men to task for not, manning up and getting married, whatever, how they just completely checked out of the changes that have occurred in society within, we could go back a couple decades, but we're just talking like the last 20 years, these massive upheaval in the dating market alone, because they don't keep up to, they are not following what's going on a day-to-day basis. And we're at the middle of a political and social and cultural situation where every single day has a new change, and we're not talking small changes. These are huge changes in our the decreed morality set forth by our wise overlords, whether they're in Los Angeles or in New York City or in DC. But it's like, if you don't keep up, you have no idea what the latest thing that you're not that I care what you're not allowed to say, but it's stuff that it's just to be aware, like, so you can understand why people behave the way they do.
Yeah. People have theories about that, and that it's related to time scales, that we measure time by nanoseconds now. It used to be, you just go back the last 100 years and how the measurement of time has changed. And now you've got computers, the day trading computers, that they fight for the closest spot to the mainframe or whatever on Wall Street so that they can get their orders in slightly faster than their competition. And so when you've got your time scales, when you are measuring your life like we're not meant to, in nanoseconds, and that I think that's the theory anyway, that there's so much change happening because it's something, we're constant news, 24/7 news, social media. You're always, you used to have to send a letter in the mail and it would take a week or whatever. Now it's instant communication. So the theory is because time has been so, we can measure it so finitely now to the nanosecond, that's why these things, it seems like things are, and it's not just seems, but things are changing very fast.
But I would add to that, though, even if you do unplug from social media, like you do, detox from, like, for example, I've gotten rid of cable. I don't have, CNN or Fox. I don't have any of that shit. Aaron was just talking about, for fuck's sake, he was at the grocery store and the goddamn bag boy was saying, too bad about Trump got elected.
Yeah.
You can't get away from it. You live in Seattle, for fuck's sake, and you're going to have some motherfucker bitching about this. It's impossible. Unless you're going to literally, like you said, be like Henry David Thoreau and go live, on Walden Pond or something. How the fuck can you get away from it? It's impossible. You can't just say, "Oh, well, I'm not going to watch the news."
Right. It's not possible. And the other thing is, you got to interact with people at some point, and those people they're not going to have all those beliefs pinned to their chest or their arms and wear it on their sleeve. It's going to be there, and it will, you say the wrong thing, you utter the wrong thought crime. And you have no idea now what you're dealing with. And I think the other problem is that's why you see a lot of these just the weird phenomenon with people who happen to be Trump supporters who, try explaining to somebody in 1995 during the NBA season, Dennis Rodman being the ambassador to North Korea for President Donald Trump. I was just thinking about this. I was like, dude, I remember when I was a kid, we were following Dennis Rodman. He was that guy who could get the ball if somebody missed a shot.
Rebounds.
Yeah, he rebounded. Yeah, he was the rebound. He was the rebound king. And but he was kind of a weird guy. And then when it's like now it's like these guys, and then you have people who were traditionally on the left who are now Trump supporters, or they get in trouble for just saying something. It's because that's what happens when your views, you're like, if you were a 90s left winger or Democrat, and you got put in a one of those
Cryogenic freeze.
Cryogenic chambers, and you woke up today, you would be like, the country is changing so fast. If your views are not changing along with them, you can't just adopt a certain view and be like, okay, this is what you're supposed to believe. You have to wake up every single day if you are wanting to be one of those people. And you have to check your social media to find out, oh, what am I being told now is the latest thing I need to care about? And it's good for us to know, to be aware. It's sort of like, you want to be aware what the battlefield looks like. You want to know what the terrain looks like. You don't want to go in there and not know what you're dealing with. And especially I would say for people who are either trying to comment on it or explain what's going on, because I think a lot of people have absolutely no idea how to explain the situation that we have in our country, but that's because they're not looking at everything or staying up to date.
I can say, I was going to say, I wrote down, I wanted to make sure I said kudos to John for doing all that research to prevent something bad from happening in his neighborhood.
Right.
And I think you're an anomaly. I mean, I just quit that government board. It's one down, one to go.
Congratulations.
The job's coming next. And there's just so few people that are willing to put in that kind of work to make a difference. That's why things it's sort of like there's an inertia. And if you don't have enough people like John and enough people that get involved, it's just going to happen, because things are changing so fast. I mean, Obama was against gay marriage at the beginning of his presidency, right? I mean, they made a big point of being against gay marriage, and that's not an issue that I don't really care about that issue. But the fact that changed so quickly, and now it's just that's the way that it is. There's nobody talking about it anymore, and so things are changing fast. But I go back to, it's the people's fault. It's because everything's so easy that they just don't want to put in the effort to actually try to fight against it. They'd rather just get steamrolled, I guess.
Well, I mean, like, for example, the example that I was given that happened here to stop the homeless thing. The reason I did that wasn't necessarily out of some civic duty or something like that. I had a vested interest. I owned this property. It was gonna, but I mean, there was a lot of lethargy on other people that had, just as much interest as I did, and they seemed to be upset about it, but they weren't able to seem to be able to apply their energy and their intellect to actually attacking the problem.
That's exactly what happened here in my neighborhood just recently. And it's the same thing. You try to get people involved. You try to say, this is going to happen if you do nothing. And they do nothing. And it's just maddening that people will not have a vested interest in their future.
Well, it's very defeating on my end.
When your future's tied to theirs, it's really frustrating. I mean, because normally, Aaron would say, well, fuck them. Let them die. And I agree with that to some extent, but a lot of times, you're tied to them with a rope or a chain. So if they go overboard, they're taking you with them. So you can't always be like that.
Well, I mean, and that's been the problem with, I think, for men like us, where we're more inclined towards individualism, because we are outside thinkers, and we're maybe contrarian or willing to be considered outside of normal society on these things. But the problem with that is that we rely on other people one way or another for our lives to work and to live the lives that we live. And if they decide not to, play along on that, but like the decisions they make affect us, in regardless of whether it's like with the condo situation that you had. Imagine if you hadn't been president of the condo board, but somebody else was president of the condo board and decided to actively discourage anybody from causing problems about it. Or it's just you rely on other people to do the right thing in so many ways we just don't notice. When they're driving on the road, like it's almost like, oh, this person's a bad driver, or they drive drunk, they're going to crash their car. Great. They may crash their car into yours. They may run you over, or they may hit Cappy when he's on his motorcycle riding along. Like we rely on other people to know how to drive their cars. We rely on other people to show up to work every single day. In some sectors of society, others, it would actually probably be productive if they didn't show up to work. But it's just, but I'm seeing that around me here and elsewhere. It's like, we can only run away from and I would agree with John on this. You can't run away from the problem. You can't go to the woods, and not only can not everybody live like Henry David Thoreau, but it's not even something that's viable anyways, because people will come there. You just get a few years, or maybe a year, or maybe even less to enjoy it to yourself. But then other people move over there, and as a group, as a collective, they have influence over how you're able to live your life.
And even Walden, I read Walden a long time ago, and my initial reaction was, this guy didn't just live on his own. He was dependent on other people.
Yeah, it's a total myth. It's a total myth that he was just living by himself. He depended on other people to live that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, transcendentalists are all fags anyway. I didn't care for Emerson or Thoreau, but
I hate to say it, but it's only because maybe I've gone down this rabbit hole a little bit more. But one of the more hurtful things in the past year or two I've found is just speaking to John's point and DT's point about how your neighbors who presumably are not ranked leftist, socialist, communists, when you say, hey, guys, we got to rally up and do all this, and people are like, yeah, let's do it, yeah. And then when it comes time, like nobody shows up.
Yep.
It taught me a very important lesson where it's a great quote from a song called Ministry, called Jesus Built My Hot Rod. And it starts out, where you come from, it's gone. Where you thought you were going to, weren't never there. And where you are ain't no good unless you can get away from it. And unfortunately, this has forced me to believe that the best strategy is kind of this rearguard action where you constantly withdraw and you have as minimum reliance upon other people, left or right, doesn't matter, because these people presumably on the right are just simply not left. That I'm finding out that doesn't mean they're any more responsible or reliable. Matter of fact, they're a bunch of hypocrites, because for every adamant conservative, right-wing, libertarian, you find out he's this fat, lazy slob collecting a government check and lives at home. And so what I've found, not only do you have to unplug for your own sanity and happiness, because I only got 35 years left of life on this planet. I am not wasting it getting upset on a Twitter feed or Facebook or watching CNN or Fox News. But in order to maintain my lifestyle, to maintain my happiness, to make sure I'm not going to lose my house, I'm not going to lose the majority of my investment, you have to constantly keep on going and rely on fewer and fewer people. So the number of people I rely on is very little, and probably the least I can. But inevitably, you do rely on some people, but then all of a sudden, to make sure you're not completely dependent on those people, you have to be willing to move. You have to be willing to sacrifice. In the olderbrother.com, Older Brother, the podcast, is a perfect example of it. I got a strike on my YouTube channel. All right, I have to have another line of income. I have to have redundancy built into my life. So it's this constant arms race of diversifying sources, diversifying revenue income, diversifying people you're reliant upon. And it's almost taking a survivalistic batten down the hatches type of thing. And oh, by the way, let's build another battleship while we're at it, just in case, because it's happening.
I think. Oh, go ahead, John.
No, I was going to say, Aaron, that's brilliant. Like I found out, to go back to my just little example with the stopping the homeless shelter, was I got people involved. Like, one of the things I did was I called a special homeowners meeting, got everyone out there and, got them. I actually drove some people to the meeting we had to protest it. Because it has to go before all these reviews and everything like that. I got everybody there. I got them vocal. I got them talking about the fact that they would be convicted felons in there. I did all this research on there. I got people riled up. You know what I mean? And then I noticed when people had a cause to fight for, you'd be surprised. Every once in a while, there was people that would get, uppity and things like that. And, it was kind of nice for a little while. We had, the building kind of came together and worked as a collective, and it was pretty powerful.
I think that this kind of dovetails in a weird way to what I was thinking about the whole national anthem football thing, is that a lot of people, as long as you give them a way to escape reality and escape the situation, they're not going to get motivated to really try and make changes in the world around them. But when you deprive them of look at Gamergate. Gamergate was this final pushback against whatever wave of feminism was going on, because they were going after the video games. And then you see them going after the NFL stuff. It's like, as long as you don't touch their entertainment stuff. Like, imagine how many of the people would you have to motivate these people if Netflix canceled their subscriptions and said, we're not serving you anymore?
Right. Yeah,
or did something like that. No, they would say they would be up in arms. They'd be calling up the people the next day. So people are very, very weird and finicky about what will rile them up. And what's and the fool and the idiot will pick that as a place to make a political statement, because rather than going somewhere else where they're not going to make a big deal about it.
Lost your last part there. What did you say?
Oh, just I was saying how it's amazing how people don't realize this, like the whole NFL kneeling thing. They picked the absolute worst spot to do it at, the area where people are going to get upset and actually stop watching football. But if you do that in other areas, they're not going to make a big deal about it, because they're just kind of like what John was saying, is he had to drive people over there. But if they canceled this Netflix subscriptions, if that board had been responsible for it, they would have been at the meeting, and they would have crawled under barbed wire to get there and yell at them and say, why are you taking away my Netflix account? Now I can't watch the latest season of Game of Thrones or something like that.
Well, that's something the left is really good at. They pay for the buses, right?
Yeah.
They pay for it. And that's something the right is really lousy at.
They get the government to pay for it. I mean, that's how Obama's career started. He started as a community organizer. What the fuck kind of bullshit job is that, right? So basically what he did is he started went to work for some sort of fucking nonprofit that was almost entirely funded with taxpayer fucking money, took a fucking salary, used it to finance his fucking Senate race, and then he had all these fucking leftist fags vote him in.
But they I guess the left is, did they just recognize and react to human nature a little better than the right, I guess?
Absolutely.
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah. They know that if you want to get what you want, you've got to pay people to do it. You've got to actually, basically hold their hand and, okay, go into the bus. Here's your talking points. Here's what you say. Here's your signs. Here's your pussy hat. Here's whatever it is. And they just give them everything so that they're ready to go. And it's grassroots, right? But the right, I guess we're too independent-minded.
The fact that, again, and I like the guy, I support him fully. The fact the right has all of a sudden now discovered Jordan Peterson is just how slow draw McGraw they all are. I mean,
if Jordan Peterson fucks up once, the right will throw him under the bus.
And they will.
If he says something wrong, I have nothing to do with
just
that
like
guy.
Well, and you're talking about just now about the fact that the left responds better to human nature. I think it's also personality or psychological or emotional, but there's most average people are just sort of go along, get along. They're not interested in agitating or getting emotionally worked up about something or going around and being an activist minded type person. So what you can have is a small group of people who do that. And you almost kind of see this. I've seen this in sales jobs that I've worked at, where not all, but the most successful salesman I knew once, he just got in people's comfort zones and just stayed there until they bought whatever he was trying to sell them. Like, that was his tactic. And so that's what a lot of people do, is they know that if you get in people's comfort, disturb people's comfort zones, it's easier for them to just give you what you want instead of actually fight you. And I think that we see that a lot with politics. It's like, okay, just give them what they want and let's just move on. Like, they don't want to actually fight it out and actually take care of the problem completely. They just want to give the Band-Aid. They want to give it's sort of like, it's almost like with parenting, where the parent just gives the kid the cookie whenever he stomps his feet and screams, as opposed to saying, no, I'm actually going to fight this out with you and keep saying no until you learn your lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, that's actually a very good comparison, because I do think of leftists as pretty much petulant children.
They are. They never stop. They might retreat a little bit, but they will come back. What are they going to do? Get a real job? They're going to go work? That's their survival depends on getting free handouts all the time. So they might recoup. And another perfect example, John, is it probably was easier for them. They're like, whoa, this guy put up a fight. Well, there's a piece of property down here where there's no community organizer who's going to put up a stink. And so they go the path of least resistance. But trust you me, they're not going away. And this is a question I always like asking leftists. I say, how much is enough? Like, when will you be happy? And the reason I ask that question is because there is an objective answer. Or maybe not an objective answer, but there's an objective way to measure how much is. They say, well, I don't know. What do you mean how much? I said, right now you take 40% of GDP. What percent more of the economy do you want? Do you want 80%? Do you want it all? What is it? Just so we know. So let's stop dicking around and arguing about it. Say, all right, we want 70% of the economy. Fine, let's vote on it. If the society doesn't want it, screw you. You don't get your 70%. But I would just like to have, some numbers, but they will not stop. And Venezuela, the history of communism, it proves it all. They will not stop until they have it all. And then when they get it all, they'll still bitch and whine when they don't have it all because the economy is not working and they need to get they got to blame, like in the Soviet days, they blamed capitalist infiltrators.
Right. It never ends. Tom Woods described it in the most accurate way possible, is that their philosophy and ideology is perpetual revolution through the state. So it's continuous, it's never ending, it doesn't stop. And so people are always thinking, oh, this is the view to adopt, or this is the policy to adopt. No, that's the policy you adopt for today. And once you achieve that, it's sort of like scoring a touchdown during a football game. You score that touchdown, the game isn't over. You go you score another touchdown or basketball or whatever, but you don't just end, it doesn't end there. You move on to the next thing. And then when you still haven't achieved your goal or your objective, you start blame, even when you're in charge. Oh, and that's the other thing that they do is they will be totally obviously in charge, but it's always they're not in charge. They're still fighting the system. They're still
Flint's water supply.
They're still the rebels. Like, you saw that when the Bolsheviks took over in 1917, I believe. And they tried to institute communism, and it was a total failure, and they had to do reforms. Well, then they started doing. You saw this with the French Revolution too. They take over, and then they start doing purges because to blame for all the problems that they instituted, like when France instituted the 10-day week and abolished the church and all these other things that just caused total chaos in the society. Well, then you have to blame somebody for that. And then what happens, of course, then the revolutionaries get executed themselves, and the Communist Party got purged. I think it was like 90%. I could be wrong, but I recall reading a book. 90% of the Communist Party members during Stalin's purges were either sent to harsh labor camps or were executed. These are all the people who were part of the original movement, but the problem is they didn't keep up, or they presented a threat to him. Now, Stalin didn't get rid of people for ideological reasons. He was paranoid and he was smart. He knew that he had to get rid of people who were going to present a threat to him. But that's what there's never a period where they're like, dude, we're done. We got what we wanted. Kind of like with the abolitionists after the Civil War, they closed all their places because they're like, we achieved like the 13th Amendment. We there's no purpose for us to be.
Yeah, they went home and lived lives.
They went home and lived their lives. But that doesn't happen with these groups because one, their ideology is just not tenable. It's economically it always falls apart. So it's a continuous effort to try to go upstairs where there's never an end to it.
Right. They have nothing else. That's my point, is they have no real point and purpose of living in life. Again, this is in part why I do the clarity test, is go look at their background. See, you're rarely going to see a happily married father of 3 who's an accountant and plays softball. It's always their career and their profession is their religion and their politics. And it's just, there's nothing, and there's nothing else for them to do but continue the parasitism and continue going up those. And you try and warn them, say like, look, you got to do something productive or worthwhile. But their fear of an actual job and the labor that's required with it is just too daunting, just too scary. So they will waste their entire lives ruining other people's lives, including their own, for some bullshit political religion that has never served or had any kind of success in life or served any human being in its entire existence.
I think, though, there's also an attraction to here's the thing. If you want to have power, you look at a problem that cannot be solved, and then you tell people, give me power and I'll solve the problem. You're guaranteed a timeless claim to power. And
wait, hang on. Let me interrupt for a second. For example, if I claimed I could make American women thin again, I'd have unlimited power, because that's never going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm thinking more like
if you could really do it.
If you recall, like, how Christ said that you'll always have the poor with you. So whenever somebody talks about any poverty, I immediately think you understand that that's never going to happen because one, poverty is all a matter of comparison to someone else. Somebody who's poor in America in 2016 or the current year that's not poor in the Horn of Africa or wherever. It's all a matter of they're poor to the person next to them. So when somebody's trying to solve poverty, they're trying.
Oh, we lost him again. TJ, you up there?
Curious about is whether or not they actually, yeah, I'm still there. Whether or not they actually know that, and that's part of the strength, because they know that poverty is never going to get solved, so they're never going to have to admit that and give up their power. Whereas, say, like somebody who's trying to end slavery in the United States, that was a tenable goal. If you were an abolitionist back in the day, it was objection. You could objectively measure it. The law's been passed. It is legally
done and done.
Yeah, the Constitution was amended.
Movement's closed. Yeah, the Constitution was amended. Like we're done. Like nobody denied it. Nobody was like, well, and came up with something else because it was a very clear objective that anybody could look at, as opposed to any poverty. What does that look like?
Right. No, and the same thing: sexism, education, special ed.
And when the problem is actually solved, you just change the definition of what the problem is.
Yeah, there's sorry about that, Dan. I thought I had to turn it off. What's that expression? The revolution ultimately eats itself, right?
Right.
One of the things that you're beginning to see now is that the left has pretty much gotten everything that they wanted, right? Like, let's just go in a recent time period where we're all adults and remember this. It started out with like the gay marriage, right? Now it's to the point where you have transsexuals in the fucking military. You have, which is really going to be fun, and now you can just identify with whatever sex you feel you are. I mean, there was a 3-year-old that came out as a homosexual. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I was 3, I didn't know what the fuck sex was. So it's just gotten so extreme. And so eventually now it's to the point where they're having to kind of eat their own now, right? Because you've seen like what, with I thought the Harvey Weinstein was just great because this guy was, best friends with Hillary Clinton and Meryl Streep and all that stuff. And just, the whole Me Too movement, just, and then now the awkwardness of Bill Clinton. I don't know. He's doing some book tours. He's claiming that he co-wrote a book with, what's that guy's name? Patterson, some fiction book. And they asked him all these questions about, Monica Lewinsky and, all this kind of stuff. I mean, the guy's a fucking rapist. He raped Juanita Broderick, for fuck's sake. So eventually that's what you're seeing now it's kind of like the Stalinist purges you see what's going on right now. So I'm hoping that they'll start eating enough of their own that it'll distract them and we can fight, stop doing a rearguard action and maybe go on the offensive a little bit, because history has a way, the cliche of the pendulum and stuff like that, but there is a lot of truth in it. It does tend to swing back and forth. Like you had the French Revolution and then it went to, they said, fuck that. And they got Napoleon. So it does go back and forth.
Well, like I said, they only got to keep the lights on for another 35 years. That's really all.
It's all about you, right, Aaron?
It is all about me. Hey, you know what though? You know who doesn't have another 35 years?
Bob De Niro.
No, Anthony Bourdain, because he's dead, huh?
Yeah.
What was it? Someone was saying that they think he was killed because he owed his heroin dealers money or something.
No. You know what? I don't care because I have the social media and CNN. Anytime I log in, I'm not even on social media. I just go to Bing or Google or Yahoo. I log out and there's the Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain. I'm like, get Anthony Bourdain out of my ass. I didn't like him. He was this overrated. He's like as overrated as Anderson Cooper. It's not a shock he worked for CNN. I don't give a shit that he was some hippie vagabond traveler. And they all made it sound like he sacrificed and traveled all over the world and ate food. I'm like, oh, he traveled all over the world eating food at CNN's dime. I'm like, what a fucking
what a rough life.
Yeah. Hey, Aaron, I gotta take off. So it's a great conversation. You guys keep going if you want to, but I gotta bounce.
Thanks for coming on. Happy internet birthday there, DT.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Take care, man.
Thanks.
We could probably finish it up.
Yeah, probably should wrap it up too. It's
because you got to go do things. I got to pee. To be honest. and then we got to eat and all that other stuff. All right, John, why don't you do your shout out for your YouTube channel?
Yeah, John. Well, my YouTube channel is just the John Steele Show on YouTube. But you better a quicker way to find me is John_Steele 99, and Steele is spelled STEELE, and then 99. John_Steele 99. There's a link to my YouTube channel, which I interviewed Aaron on one-on-one. Us just going back and forth on the world's reserve currency and the possibility of a dollar collapse.
Yeah. Did you get any new? Did you put any new ones up?
Oh no, I haven't. I need someone to interview. Someone that's willing, that I find interesting. So maybe we talk off air. You should contact me with. You should contact me with who to talk to.
Yeah, this TJ Martinell guy, you might like him. He's from Seattle. You guys might know something about Seattle. You might be educated. I don't know.
Yeah, TJ, if you're interested, we can do it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Aaron, send me his contact information on Twitter.
I will. Yeah, and
I'm going to do that.
And yeah, I'll line you up with a bunch of other people that I happen to have contacts with. TJ, tell everybody about you and your stuff and where they can find you.
Yeah, you can go to my website, tjmartinell.com. I got a weekly podcast, Mountain Pass Podcast, at soundcloud.com/tjmartinell. And then I'm on Twitter, twitter.com/tjmartinell. So pretty straightforward. And then I've got 2 books on Amazon, The Stringers and The Informers.
Awesome. And then most of you guys already know my stuff, but if you be kind to, you can always check out the Older Brother Podcast and the Clary Podcast. That's on SoundCloud. Look up the Clary Podcast. You'll find it. We have my books on Amazon.com. We got Bachelor Pad Economics, Worthless, Curse of the High IQ, Black Man's Guide Out of Poverty, Reconnaissance Man, and Poor Richard's Retirement. Trust you me, I give you a 1,000% rate of return guarantee on those books, because if you read them, you'll make 10 times the amount that you spent on them. So like $500 if you do that. It's not a big gamble or guarantee I'm making there. Patreon.com/Aaron Clary if you want to go ahead and donate some cash. But honestly, just go and do all your Amazon affiliate shopping through my Amazon affiliate program. I will have all the links down below in the description for the videos there. And real quick, good news, guys. Hang on. This channel might be monetized by next week and certainly by the week after. So we will be able to do super chats.
Yes, and so we're speaking, if I'm on when he chooses to have the next show, I am going to make sure that if Aaron doesn't read those super chats, I promise I will. Because unlike Aaron, I listen to what our listeners are saying in the chat.
No, and I do. I appreciate it. And I'm thinking I won't, but I'm just going to tell you I'm thinking about giving you a cut of the super chats, because that actually is a good service to have, like somebody keeping an eye on it, because I got to maintain the main board. But just to tell people who are interested in the history here, you need 240,000 minutes of listening, 4,000 hours of listening before you can monetize your channel. And we're already up, I looked, like 153,000, and it's only been 2, maybe 3 weeks. So if it keeps going at this rate, we'll hopefully have this channel will be monetizable. We'll have the super chats. I do want to bring that in regularly, because I do want to interact with the audience a little bit more, because that's one of the main reasons to do live stream.
Yeah, that's the whole point of us doing it live, actually, I think. And speaking of getting the numbers up so we can do that and have more interaction with the audience. Hey, guys, are you listening? There's 42 of you. Those who haven't clicked the like button, click it. Yeah. It'll show up more. So click that like button, please. Appreciate it.
Yeah, like it and send it. That's the other thing. It's word of mouth. I know everyone's like, buy people on Twitter. No, just send it to friends. If you like, hey, guys who are like looking at buying houses, you're millennials, send it to them. I mean, we had some great conversations here to help people. But yeah, do comment, like, and subscribe, and that really does help out. So, all right, well, listen, John, TJ, thanks for being on the show. I appreciate it, and we'll do it next week.
All right, guys. Great talking to you. I got to head out.